Good evening, folks. 6 o'clock. We're going to start the meeting. If I have your attention, would you please join me to in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is the meeting of the Bennington Select Board, July 14th, 2014. We are in the River Street Firehouse. We meet the second and fourth Monday of every month right here, unless otherwise noted. Tom Jacobs, Michael Keane, Sharon Brush, Vice Chair. I'm Greg Van Houten, Chair. James Carroll, Justin Corcoran, John McFadden, Town Manager Stuart Hurd, and Linda Bermuda's recording. Thank you all for coming. First item on the agenda is the minutes. We have 2 minutes to approve. We do not have a quorum present from June 9, so I need a motion to approve the minutes from June 9. We're in your last packet. So we have a motion from Jim.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's 6 and 1 abstain. And then we have the minutes from June 23rd, which are in your packet.
Move to approve.
Michael, second.
Second.
Second from Jim. Any discussion?
I'll abstain as absent.
Tom was absent. It's an abstention.
So was I.
And so was Sharon. All in favor? That's 5. Okay. All right, next item is citizens. There's no PA. The microphones are just for the folks at home, so everyone try and speak clearly. And when you're speaking at the microphone, I'd ask you to do the same. Just try and take your time and speak so people can hear you. But this is not a house PA system. This is just for Cat TV.
We'll speak up.
We have a lot of people have told us that they're coming to speak tonight. Last week we had a similar, or 2 weeks ago we had a similar thing. Everyone was very respectful of each other's time, I thought, and we were concise, and I'm going to ask people to do the same. We do have other business, obviously, that we have to get through to keep the town running. There's a lot of people indicated they wanted to speak about the proposed Shires housing development on Silver Street. So you're welcome to do that. The project developer is here. I am forwarding comments to the project developer that I get because, you know, it is their project. They have a relationship with the community that they need to develop, and you know, I don't want this to become a fight of the select board against the people of Bennington that are opposed or for it. You know, this is a private development project, and you know, we shouldn't be advocating one way or the other, is my feeling. Each individual select board member has their feelings on it, and they're welcome to discuss that with their constituents at any time. But you know, and I want people to be heard. So I'd ask people to come up to the microphone as they'd like to speak and speak their mind. If you have a question for us, that's fine.
We have warrants.
And I'm sorry, we have warrants we have to do next, and then we'll get on to that. So are there any questions on the warrants, Tom?
No, it's consistent with the budget. I have no questions for.
No question, Michael?
None at all.
Okay. Sharon?
The only question I have, Stu, is warrant number 25, is that the final 2013 warrant, as far as you know?
It might not be the final. There might be a second warrant at the next meeting. We try to allocate the expenses to the appropriate fiscal year, and as the bills come in, some may be later than others.
Okay, but the first warrant for this fiscal year, or, yeah,
It
this
would
fiscal
normally
year
be the
is...
last one of the last fiscal year.
Okay, okay, that's the only question I have.
James? Nope. Justin? John? All set. All set. I am as well. Okay. You can start. You're the first one up. Please identify yourselves and then and what your relationship is, or with Bennington or the project or whatever it is you want to speak. Obviously, you can speak about anything else as well.
Hi, my name is Dave Crowley. I'm just a regular...
You have to speak up, Dave. Again, that mic is just for Cat TV, so if you could speak to the room, please.
Oh, my name is Dave Crowley. I live on 309 Week Street. Been here about 10 years. My proposal for the select board is that one of the things that I've noticed in traveling around successful, prosperous towns that invite and welcome visitors and their own citizenry is recycling bins, which I think should be throughout downtown. And I believe that all uncontrolled, that is no stop sign, no stoplight, crosswalks in this town should have that stop for pedestrians in crosswalks, state law, in every one of them. We have a busy fast-moving society. Sometimes people don't notice that people are standing in the crosswalk. It would be a great thing if we could have those signs. They have them at the hospital, they have them in Williamstown. It shows that a town cares for both its citizenry and its tourists. It's considerate, it is considered, and I think that it will help our town a lot. Thank you.
Stuart, have we looked into those at all for our downtown?
In fact, the new solid waste management law will require that the town place recycling bins throughout the community. There is a cost obviously involved with that. Compliance, I think, is 2016, but Speaker is correct. We're moving in that direction. We have looked at it before, and we attempted to place recycling bins in the public parking lots, but initially we found that they were used as garbage collection instead of recycling. But I think more people are aware of the difference now, and so I think that's going to change. We used the stop for pedestrian things in Main Street one year to see if they would slow the traffic. Unfortunately, Main Street is a relatively narrow travel lanes, especially with the truck traffic coming through, and most of those signs were destroyed within a matter of weeks. I do see them at the hospital. I think they're appropriate in places where there is sufficient width on the street so that we don't endanger the driving public or the pedestrian public, but I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, we should take a look at that. I think well, yeah, if you have a question, my feeling, I've seen downtown, pedestrians stand there while cars blew right by them. I think the parked cars have a lot to do with that too, but maybe we come up with something. Or there's also a policy Williamstown has adopted where they have stencils on the sidewalk that says "Look, listen, and wave" or something like that. And the pedestrians actually stand in the crosswalk and raise their hand when they want to cross. So there's nothing in the road required for that, but at least it alerts people that you're there, and it's pretty effective.
Even a stencil on the road that would say,
Yeah.
"Stop for pedestrians."
Yeah.
If signs are getting destroyed, they can at least read.
So, all right. Thank you, Dave.
How you doing?
How are you tonight?
For those who may not know me, my name's Christopher Wright. I'm going to read from my paper tonight because I don't have a great memory, but I know a little bit about myself. I'm a longtime resident of Bennington, a one-time taxpayer in Bennington, a voter, and a past employee of the town of Bennington. For those who don't know me, but might remember me, I once worked for the town of Bennington as a Bennington police officer. When I was an employee of the town, I was always a professional in my contact with the public and the government who I work for. With that in mind, I'm about to comment on an issue that's very upsetting to myself and others. At the last select board meeting, we're going to call this a rude conversation. I have a specific complaint about a board member and our town manager, Mr. Hurd. At the last select board meeting, during the break between the citizens' comments and the Applegate Willowbrook pathway presentation, a conversation took place between a board member and Mr. Hurd. The reason I know this is because the microphones were still on and the conversation was live on television, recorded, replayed on the television, and is still on the internet to this day. Thank you, Cat TV. It's on YouTube. If anybody wants to listen to it, all they got to do is go there and check it out. I won't go into the specifics about the conversation other than say the conversation was about me and an issue that I had come to the board to speak on. I won't ask for an apology. I wouldn't accept one if one was offered. This is just another of the many reasons why people are afraid to come here and speak and ask questions of the board. If this is how our government and board members, as individuals or as a whole, feel about the people who come before them, this whole process is seriously flawed and needs to be rebuilt from the ground up to the top. I take these issues seriously, and if the board and the managers think they're going to sit up there and laugh at us like Beavis and Butthead, they have another thing coming. I will always be reminded of this during any future interactions with our government, board members, and especially while I'm standing at the voting booth, pen in hand. Enough on that. The solar project. I'm talking about the solar project on Barney Road. Now I'm speaking for myself and a number of interested parties, and our interest is in the solar project, the proposed solar project at 401 Barney Road. I'm going to speak on a planning commission issue that has come to our attention. The reason I'm speaking before the select board is because there are conveniently no provisions in the application review panel, the development review board, or the planning commission meetings for citizens to speak on issues that are not warned and on the agenda. On Monday, May 19th, 2014, a Bennington Planning Commission meeting was warned. This is that warning. Monday, May 19th, Bennington Planning Commission, Town of Bennington Conference Room, 5:15 p.m. Agenda: review pending applications to the Public Service Board. A, telecommunication tower, Middle Pownell Road. B, solar array, Route 9 East. The meeting was held and actions were taken. Myself and others would later learn that this was not the solar project at Route 9. It was the one at 401 Barney Road. Myself and other interested parties were not properly notified, warned of this meeting, were not present at the meeting, and would only learn through our due diligence some but not all of the contents of the meeting. That meeting took place that same day, and there was a presentation by Dan Monks, our assistant town manager and planning, whatever he is there, about a solar project at Barney Road, not Route 9 as stated in the warning. The Planning Commission acted, and their concerns were set forth in an email to Chad Farrell, PE, Principal, Encore Redevelopment, who has been working with Mr. Monks in the town on this project. The minutes of the meeting posted on the Planning Commission website did not truly reflect everything that occurred at the meeting. We feel this intentional or unintentional renaming of the project misled all interested parties, and we consider the warning, meeting, all contents, informations, and actions illegal and void. We feel that the meeting should be properly warned, re-held, and the solar project not move forward until this meeting is warned, held, and all interested parties are allowed to comment, voice their concerns, and ask questions about the proposed solar project on Barney Road. Now, I have a question to the select board. Will the select board, town manager, or assistant town manager rectify this situation, or do we have to seek the assistance of the state of Vermont, who I have already been in contact with, and or council to pursue a favorable outcome on this issue?
Well, this is the first I've heard that. I would certainly take it up and look into it. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I want to talk to you about it and get the details on that, because issues of these boards should be properly warned, and people should have the opportunity, the interested parties should have the opportunity to speak. So if that is in fact the case, there should be protocol as to how to handle it.
Does anybody else have anything to say on this?
I think just looking at the way that the agendas are set up, if there's multiple projects that could be the same thing, solar project, a little more description would be nice. Then at least you would know which project they were talking about and which night. But I think there's a procedure in place to properly warn.
Yeah, there should be. The warnings should be fairly clear as to what's being discussed. I mean, I think that.
See, everything up till now that we've heard is it's been called Barney Road. It never had an address until recently. It's been addressed as 401 Barney Road and given a property value. So all of a sudden, there's a meeting that we don't think we need to be at because we don't think it concerns us on another piece of property that there was a proposed
Right.
project at.
And
So
it was-
now the thing is going down the road without us.
You've mentioned this project several times. Do you have a specific concern about what's going on in this
I have
project?
many concerns.
You do?
Nothing, they're all specific, but there's many.
Right, okay. So I kind of caught that, so I wanted to make sure that.
Okay. Now, again on the solar project. As I said, I represent a number of interested parties who have attempted to acquire all information about the solar project at 401 Barney Road. I have attempted to do that at this select board meeting and on my own valuable time outside of these meetings. I have yet to receive all the requested information because basically no one in favor of the project wants to talk about it. Whether to keep the public in the dark about the project or for whatever reason, they just don't want to talk about it or just don't want to tell the truth. Some of the information I have received, whether intentional or unintentional, was false. Those in favor of the project want to ask questions of myself and others and attempt to gain information about what we know about the project, but won't share their information or be truthful with us about what they know about the project. My question to the town manager and or assistant town manager, or anybody who would like to assist, will you release all the information, including but not limited to the dates, names, numbers, basically everything about this project to me, so that the interested parties and the public can know more about this project?
Well, as far as I know, all of the information that we have has been shared with you, but I don't know that for a fact because I'm not the one dispensing the information. Encore Redevelopment is the contractor and the general contractor that we have been dealing with. There have been investors' names that have apparently floated about, but I don't have that information, and that information is shared with the Development Review Board and the Planning Director when it becomes available. So I would assume that you're getting everything we have.
Do you know the date that the project was first talked about with the town?
It has to be at least a year ago, perhaps more.
But before you leave that, because I'm uncertain and unclear about a process, we do have a planning commission, we have a DRB, and the select board's only interest right now is to be assured that the process is being followed. This citizen has concern, and that's going to be addressed. And you'll hear back from our chair and our town manager. That's all we can do as a select board. But you're entitled to that, and we will get you that.
Thank you. I got two more things and I'll be out. The water bond. It's a little late now because the bond is passed mainly due to the advanced voting date, lack of warning, lack of time warning, and time for citizens to speak and ask questions related to the whole process and the problem with the project. As you all well know, I was not allowed by the board to ask all the questions that I had about the project, and many, those were not answered. Some others were. I volunteered to let others speak on the project, but I will never do that again. I do want to thank the board for providing me with some, but not all, the information related to the problem and the project. I read every bit of it and found it to be very interesting. There was enough information there to reinforce my thoughts and calculations, which still lead me to believe the same conclusion. There was no need for a $3.2 million water project. Any reasonable person could read, comprehend, conclude that any water issues stated could have been fixed and the system upgraded for a small fraction of the cost of this project. And that's all I'm going to say on that. This is the last thing. Lost track. The Shires project. I'm not directly connected to it because I don't live there, but I live in this town. This is another example of things I have already covered. As far as I'm concerned, most times, all the different board members are just a rubber stamp for what Mr. Hurd and Mr. Monks think is the best for the taxpayers, residents, and the visitors to the town of Bennington. As we all know, that isn't always the case. If the board members would think for themselves instead of letting Mr. Hurd and Mr. Monks do the thinking for them, maybe we'd have a half a chance. As it stands now, on a good day, we have about a 1 or 2/7 chance. Something needs to be done about that, and I'm confident that it will be done in the near future. I have no other questions or comments at this time, and I don't require any response by the board or the town manager. Thank you.
Tough act to follow. As a member of the Mount Anthony School Board, I realize that being on a board is a thankless job, and I'd like to thank you. I don't agree with all the things that you do, but I thank you for serving. I'd also like to thank Greg and Stu for inviting us to this meeting. Your July 5th press release, you stated the procedural option on how you can reject the Vermont Community Development Grant. All it takes is a motion, a second, and a majority voice of the board. And you said, and I quote, "Such refusals to accept grants are usually reserved for breaches of law or additional burdensome conditions." I will list all these burdensome conditions shortly, but first I want to let you know some of the techniques that the Shires and John Broderick are using to get this deal passed. On the suggestion of Dan Monks, he suggested that, like we did with Appleman, I get a written agreement with Jack Appleman, again, on Dan Monk's suggestion. Specifically, we talked about saving the trees on our border, putting up a fence, maintaining it, having hooded lights, etc. So on Dan's suggestions, I called John Broderick, said, John, here's what we'd like. And he said, well, let me think about it. We can talk about it. About a week went by, and then I called Mike Harrington, asked Mike the date of the Vermont Community Development meeting in Montpelier. About 10 minutes later, John Broderick calls me back. And I thought that was quite a coincidence, but he said he would be willing to make a written agreement regarding trees, fences, lights, etc., if I would not actively oppose the project. I kind of paused and said, John, that sounds like blackmail. There was another pause on the line, and John replies, well, no, I guess we can agree to disagree, and I'll be a good neighbor, of course. I guess I'm kind of naive, and I don't understand the way this works, but I'm told that the similar blackmail was pitched to the Apple Ridge people, and then the Shire staff was told not to gas up at a certain gas station, the manager who opposes the project. Again, I'd like to have the same deal I had with Appleman, but I'm representing a lot of people who oppose this project, and I don't think I would feel right about getting some of my concerns taken care of, but letting a lot of other people down. I had an 80-something-year-old woman, see, and I think I'm kind of old, but she walked down or came down to my house 3 times to sign the petition. So selling out to blackmail, it just doesn't seem right. Now, let me start on some of those burdensome conditions which will allow you to reject the project. That's if it's granted anyhow. Number 1, Bennington has enough, some people say too much, but has enough low-income housing already. Shires has over 150 units. You've got regional affordable housing, downtown housing, Crossing Limited, Bennington South Housing, Corrigan Lane, North Branch, Willowbrook, Beach Street, Benmont Ave, Off Elm, Emma Lane, mobile housing, et cetera, et cetera. Most of the 600 people who signed that petition that Lorraine is going to give you right now, they oppose the project. Of the 600, they don't all live on Silver and South Street.
Thank you.
Also, in addition to that petition, I don't know if you noticed, but the banner ran a Facebook deal. Now, you have to understand, I'm not of this generation. I'm hardly of this century, so I don't understand Facebook at all. But someone told me that there were 58 folks that responded, and 56 of them opposed the project. I got to tell you my favorite, though, because most of them were quite serious. But one, I think it was a woman, wrote in, my dog poops in that area, and he will be really pissed if they build a project there. Well, there'll be about 600 other people that'll be pissed if someone builds a project there. Number 2 reason I hope you'd reject it. The project will raise taxes. The chief financial officer of the supervisory union, Rick Pembroke, states 24 units to be built with 1.5 children per unit equals 36 more students, which means you must add teachers. It would cause a 2.2 increase, which means you'd probably have to redistrict, disrupting 597 families. And this tax increase is in a town that voted down the BSD budget the first time and barely passed it the second. Now, on Friday, I met with the new superintendent and talked with him, and he agrees with Rick's figures. He said the formula they use is 1.5 per unit. John Broderick, I see in that handout, and it's the same figures he gave up in Montpelier. He's estimating there'll be 5 to 12 in that unit. I think you can get 5 to 12 in 2 of those 3-bedroom apartments. So I think I would go with what the supervisory union says, and that's about 36. Number 3, the Shires is not a sustainable business model. To justify their executives and their salaries, they must continue adding more and more housing projects, whether we need it or not. If they stopped developing, they would probably get by with just a maintenance staff. Fourth reason, I'm investigating into the statistics that show higher crime rates and police activity in high-density subsidized housing. I know in Rutland and Burlington that's the case. I'm waiting for the Bennington Police Department. I talked to them about a week ago, and they said they'd work on those statistics and help me out. Number 5, is the project even legal? I know a lot of people in the condominiums think it could be some kind of real estate fraud. 6, traffic and safety concerns on Southern and Silver caused by the potential 80 new people in the project. I noticed MSK did a study, and they don't indicate it would be any problem, but you have to understand that MSK has some vested interest because they'd be developing the project. So I'm not certain on their statistics. Reason number 7, property values in the area would be impacted. John Broderick is quoted as saying, "This project will increase your property values." Now, every realtor I've spoken with disagree. The 3 homeowners on Silver Street and the 2 on Lower Grandview who are trying to sell their houses, they disagree. Now, in the meeting in Montpelier, Mr. Broderick said he did not remember making that statement, but if you check the minutes of the meeting, he did make that statement. Number 8, there's very little green space in this proposed project. I don't know where kids are going to play. I did look at a site plan, and very carefully, I noticed it had a 40 by 80 play area. Now, that's 40 by 80 feet. 90 feet from home base to first, so I know they're not playing baseball in that area. I think they're going to have to play in the parking lots, in the streets, and maybe in the neighbors' backyards. Number 9 reason that you could reject this. It presents a drastic change in the character of the neighborhood. Most of the homes in that neighborhood are about a half-acre lot, and they've got 2 to 4 people in their half-acre lot. The Shires has the potential of 80 people on a 2.94-acre lot. This is densifying the area. Number 10, when this project was first done and they clear-cut, we experienced a lot of runoff. Now, they solved that by putting hay bales up along the border, but my question is, what happens when you've got blacktop and roofs that'll cause a lot more runoff to the area? Number 11 is the blasting concerns. I know that houses on Grandview Street were impacted by a previous blasting. Number 12, the Shires refers to this project as workforce housing. First, Bennington needs more jobs than they do need more housing. Second, Section 8 vouchers will be accepted, which I'm not sure constitutes workforce. I had an interesting deal. When I was actually going down to see Dan Monks about 2 o'clock, I walked through the Apple Ridge project and the condominiums. It was about 2 o'clock. There was 1 car in the parking lot. I said, these people all must be working. Then I walked by the Shires development just south of Friendly's. The parking lot was full. So I'm not sure that that's workforce housing. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that we're after a grant in low-income housing instead of a grant in economic development with all the problems we're having. Number 13, the project is unfair to local landlords who try to provide housing, but it's pretty hard to compete with the projects that's subsidized by our tax dollar. 14, and my final, Rutland just received a grant from the Vermont Community Development Program that will allow the city to de-densify a neighborhood and build single-family houses in place of multi-family houses, and it would encourage home ownership. Their focus is low to moderate income home ownership to create owner-occupied houses. That creates a neighborhood. Bennington appears to be doing the opposite, densifying and destroying a neighborhood. I have to share this one with you. One of the employees for MSK, the engineering group, who would profit from this project, kind of accosted one of our folks who opposed the project and said, "You rich people are trying to keep down the poor." I'd like to put a face on the rich people that are opposing this project. Myself would be one. I'm a retired basketball coach and a teacher. Number two, Dot Roy out there is mother, grandmother, great-grandmother who has lived in this area forever. Dot, would you stand up there, please? Thank you. You better hold your applause till later, because I'm not quite done yet. Scott McGuire, who works for Green Mountain Power, passed out this and does not live in our area. Dan Amadon, teacher. Greg Vedetto. I don't know if Greg's here, but Greg is one of those, he's a builder, and when I asked him to sign, he said, "Give me that, let me get, so I'll get some signatures." Jessica Gully Ward. Jessica is over there. Jessica manages Curves. Mary Morrissey, who is out there somewhere, our local representative. Mary is trying to take care of her constituents. Dennis Hart. I don't know, is Dennis out? There you go, Dennis. Dennis is a local builder who passed this petition around. Kevin Callanan, gas station manager. Another one of those rich people. Fred and Shirley Kennedy, retired folks that live in the project. Becky Amos, mother, back in the cheap seats. Jean McKenna, mother of 4 and working mom. That's some of the group that passed out the petitions. I have to share this one with you too. When this group meets, we meet on my back porch. When the Shires held their meeting, they met at the Mount Anthony Country Club. So I'm not sure who the rich people are. Now, because we did not get on the agenda, I could not give you all the handouts that we gave to the Vermont Community Development Board, but I'd like to get on record and share some of them. Becky, would you read your letter?
I'm Becky Amos, a Bennington landowner, taxpayer.
You need to step up to
Yes,
the microphone.
Yeah, that's probably close enough, fine.
I've lived in Bennington for 29 years, 6 as a child and 23 as an adult. I remember from my youth a vital Bennington, a downtown that invited a family stroll to the Hart Theater to watch a movie, to Fishman's to get any number of items, or to the Squire's restaurant to grab a bite to eat. I remember playing in the woods off Silver Street, where my brother learned that maple saplings don't bend like birch saplings. And my mother learned how to handle a young boy who could not remember his name for quite some time. My husband Larry, who was also raised in Bennington, and I returned to raise our own family here. It has been sad to watch the demise of this small town. The window dressings are not enough to hide the increasing number of empty storefronts. It is distressing to think that given the present climate, we would not choose again to raise our family here. I am bewildered why the town administration is focused on supporting the enticement of an increasing population of dependents, which is draining the coffers of a decreasing tax base. And I worry about what will happen to Bennington if we continue in this direction. To this end, I wrote the following letter to the editor, which appeared in the Banner on July 5th. It is concerning that the Bennington Select Board has taken preliminary steps to allow Shires Housing to build 24 rental units off Silver Street. In making this decision, the board apparently relied in part on Shires' claim of a 2.2% rental vacancy rate. The basis for that claim is from a market analysis done for Shires, which derived this implied rate from some historic data, but stated no definitive current surveys of Bennington County rental vacancies are available. Adding to the uncertainty is the effect of recent job losses, with the Plaisance plant closing in May and other impending closures. Drive around town and note the number of homes for sale. Check the real estate listings. There are 28 apartment buildings listed, representing 68 rental units with an average time on the market of 278 days. It is difficult to conclude that we need to add to the existing inventory, especially as property values decline. What is also concerning is taxpayer subsidies of construction costs and future rents without no benefit. In particular, private landlords must support their competition with their own tax dollars while trying to compete on an unlevel playing field. With forecasted population decline and few prospects for meaningful job growth, what will happen if landlords are forced into foreclosure because they can neither rent nor sell their properties? What happens to the tax base as property values continue to fall? There are too many unanswered questions for the Select Board to have moved forward with the grant application. The responsible course now will be to withdraw the application and gather relevant information in an open and thorough manner to answer the public's questions.
Thank you, Becky. I told Dot that I'd read hers. Dot Roy. I'm writing to oppose the Shire's low-income housing in the Upper Silver Street area. When buying or selling a home, the most important thing is location, location, location. Property values will drop in our formerly friendly neighborhood with the number of apartments planned. We have condos, but the condo owners have a stake in their home, keeping them up, keeping them neat, which the renters do not. I believe we have enough already in Bennington. There is no open land in the project or no park nearby. Silver Street is very busy and not conducive to ball playing. Where will the kids play? I hope we will reject the project. Sorry, Dot, I kind of chewed that one up. April Berard.
Hi, I'm April Bernard. I will try to be very brief because I agree with so many of the points that have already been made. I live at 318 Silver Street, which if you look at your map is right across the street. And we were distressed by the way in which the Bennington Town Administration originally allowed developments on the property, which are now the Applejack condominiums. The developers failed to do several things they had promised to do, including keeping the property looking okay for the years it was for sale, and also never provided the screening. If you look at your pretty little picture from the handout now, you see all kinds of trees which are not there at all, and there's no screening whatsoever for, I can imagine, that exists now, and I have no confidence that there would be if more development was undertaken. And the buildings that the Shire's plans to put in have even less in character with the neighborhood. Duplexes and large apartment buildings with the capacity for many more people than the neighborhood's resources can comfortably sustain. Another thing that's a little misleading on that map is you can't see the incredible steepness of the hill between the two parts of the development area. The runoff is extraordinary and really quite alarming in heavy rains, which is apparently all we have now. If Bennington's own downtown, about a half a mile away, was not seriously needing renovations, there are, among other empty buildings crying out for rehab, a couple of schools, several warehouses, not to mention the empty apartment buildings that are for sale. The argument about the need for affordable housing would carry more weight, but couched in this progressive-sounding phrase is nothing more than the same old business of real estate developers trying to make money without consideration for the neighborhoods that they destroy. And we hope that this will not go forward as it is proposed. I was born in Bennington. I moved back here 10 years ago, and I really hope this doesn't happen.
Representative Morrissey.
Here you go.
For those of you who may not know who I am, I'm Mary Morrissey. I'm a taxpayer and a citizen. and I would like to respectfully clarify several issues raised by two recent written statements from our Select Board Chair. The first statement appeared as a July 9th press release issued on behalf of the board concerning previous Shire's actions. I'd like to know if the full board was consulted before the statement was released, and if not, why?
The full board was made aware of our town attorney's opinion as we had asked. We had, obviously, we did not have a meeting in between, so we did not have a select board meeting based on what was going on.
So my question was, you did not meet to have the members of this board interact in what the press release was that pretty
That's
much
correct.
represented what they all felt about.
It represented what I had been asked and what I told you folks that I would get back to you about at the last meeting.
Mary, I actually wanted to bring that up as well. I think any time that you're signing anything as select board chair, it holds a certain clout, and I was a little insulted that that would be passed on as the entire board's opinion when that's not true.
Well,
if it's you,
yeah.
Greg Van Houten, citizen, that's what it should be signed as, not select board chair, as if all of us had a say in it.
Well, I did not indicate that everyone had a say in it, so.
I'd like to make a comment. I'm not throwing our chair under the bus, and I don't intend to. I was opposed to the press release because I didn't think it was strong enough and appropriate and timely enough. So I can frankly say I did not participate in that press release, but frankly, mine might have been stronger.
So, I was.
If you want an answer, Mary.
Yeah, I was responding in what I felt to be an answer to a question I was asked that I said that I would get back to, and Stu would get back to, so.
Well, and the reason I asked it is I had a number of constituents contact me to say, was this representing what the full board was saying? So what should have been represented is that it was your opinion. The next is I'd like to know if the advice provided by our town legal counsel unequivocally stated that the Shire's public hearing could not be reopened on any grounds or alternatively allowed some discretion upon showing cause. Like, for example, the lack of information in response to unanswered board and citizen questions.
Have we not made the opinion available to everybody?
Yeah,
No.
what, the press release?
Legal opinion?
The legal opinion?
Legal
No.
opinion belongs to the board, and it's an opinion that this board has received from council.
I think
And
that-
therefore it's proprietary,
Well-
Justin, and if the board wants to release
Yeah.
it, that would be a board action.
I think the board action should be made to release it. We did promise it to these people at the last meeting, that we would get them the legal opinion. I don't know what, I don't think there's anything to hide in there, but I definitely think they have a right to.
No, and I don't disagree with you. I didn't want to do that without consulting the board, because I had that. Stu had offered to do it, and my answer was, I told people I'd get back to them, I'll give them an interpretation, and so I'll sign it so that somebody gets an answer before this meeting.
But
And that
once
was-
again,
that was the reaction. That
Once
was-
again, Greg,
Yeah.
you are interpreting something. I had been actually the person at the last meeting who respectfully asked a timely transition of getting an opinion that would have us be able to have it warned if you so chose to let us speak. And that did not come forth until last week, late last week. And I, being the one, and Stuart and I spoke several times in regards to it, because we wanted to fit within the warning period, as well as be able to provide what you asked at the last meeting, which was the agenda items that people would be speaking about. So 2 weeks later or longer, we get, and I didn't even receive it and would not have received it had it not gone to Jean and that. So this again continues to be somewhat of a convoluted process going around people that have actually asked questions to you. These aren't trick questions. These people here deserve answers. And I would respectfully ask in the future that those so happen.
The option there would be to have waited until tonight, when we had an open meeting, to discuss that. We can't discuss issues as a board outside of an open meeting venue, as you know. So if I'm going to act in between meetings, I have to do it by myself. I can't do it as the board without a board meeting. And that's what I'm trying to respect.
I will remind you, and I'm not here in a debate with you.
No, I understand.
What was said last meeting is that would be provided, and we would see, based upon legal interpretation, our legal staff, that would tell us if that was appropriate based on the actions this board had taken. That did not happen. My third is I'd like to know if a written procedure has been created to ensure future board decisions are made in an open, informed, and deliberative manner with full availability of accurate and relevant information before taking a vote. If not, when?
We do not have a written policy on that. We discussed that at the last meeting, that we do have a verbal policy that we have extended to the town staff, that we, earlier in this year, that we do not
My
want.
question is, when will that happen?
That will be up to the board. If we decide, we can take that action if the board so decides, and I don't have a problem with that. I think that's important to protect the board and the people of
Well, you
Bennington.
assured us last meeting that would be happening, that you would take that up to have a policy in place.
Well, as I said, there has been no meeting since the last meeting, so you haven't missed anything.
With respect to the process of accepting the grant, if awarded by the Vermont Community Development Program, I'd like to fully understand how the board will proceed. Specifically, we were told last week in Montpelier during the Community Development Board public hearing on the grant application that the town would need to formally accept the grant. That requirement was subsequently confirmed by their general counsel as of this morning. So will formal acceptance through a future board vote be duly warned as a regular meeting agenda item? Also, please explain how and when a motion to deny acceptance could be made procedurally as mentioned in the release, in your release.
Right. My understanding is that, yes, it will be warned. If the application is accepted and the grant is awarded, it would be warned as an agenda item, and that would be the appropriate time.
Now, your understanding is that legal advice and what is in the procedures in place?
I have not sought legal advice on that. I would say,
But you're saying in your opinion, and that's got us into a little trouble before.
I don't think it has.
What I'm saying is-
But I can confirm that with Stuart. That's what Stuart has told
standard
me,
practice,
so that's what I have to go.
That's standard practice. When a Vermont development or community development block grant is offered, the town takes a formal action under an agenda item at a normal select board meeting to accept.
And that will be warned how far, or how much before?
It would be the same as any other agenda item, so it would appear probably Thursday or Friday before the meeting. And I would suggest, Mary, that a motion would be to accept, not necessarily to deny. There is an issue about whether a negative motion actually can be voted on. So the motion would most likely be to accept the grant. If it's defeated, then the grant is not accepted.
Can we
One
make sure
question, could I have a point of clarification? So if we have the option to accept, if there is a decision to grant, then that would be warned. The public would be entitled to come and comment on it, and then it would be passed till the next board meeting for a decision under the policy that we've been.
That's the policy that you've been using.
Besides alleged concerns about potential liability and negative impacts on funding future grant applications, does widespread citizen opposition to the development proposal and the manner in which the grant application was approved matter to this board?
I would say absolutely, to me.
But
I'm not, again, I can't speak for the board. If the other board members feel that they want to speak. I think that public opinion is important. I think the facts are important. I think the economic development prospects are important. I think it's all important. I think it's an important discussion to have. But the fact remains that it is not a Town of Bennington project. So, I mean, the concerns from our perspective would be towards the grant acceptance. And yeah, that would.
We have an opportunity to not put our support behind the application of the grant, though, to which we already did. I mean, it absolutely matters to me. I've never seen this many people in this room for 3 meetings in a row on any issue in my life. And I'm not suggesting I'm very old, but I've been around a little bit. You know, there's 600 signatures on that petition over there from members of our community that don't support this project. I think this board really needs to take note of what's going on here tonight.
As I stated, and as I stated at the last meeting, we would not be here had you said how important facts and other pieces of this are. That is why these people are here. There were not facts along the way, and you have all decided to take your fingerprints off the application process, and yet in every piece of correspondence that's been had to some to the Community Development Board up north is that the 100% support of this board in regards to that application, as well as the DRB board, was also indicated, and yet the town has said, hands off. We've had nothing except that we would be the avenue for the money to go through. So that's very concerning. Would any of the other board members like to comment as to, are they concerned with this process and with the people that are here who are pleading for some answers and some direction from this board? Would anyone else like to comment?
I'd be happy to, because I was in favor of supporting the grant application based upon the information that was given at that point in time. And until that decision, and I think the state has got the same information that this board had, and until there is material information to suggest why that grant or our decision should be other than it was, I would have to stay with it. But hearing the comments of the population, I'm concerned, and I'll be reviewing it as well. But so far I've heard from the neighbors, coach, and others, and I take them at their credible concern. I have not heard from John Broderick to respond to those concerns. I have not heard from other individuals who are in favor of the project. So I can tell you that, yes, of all of the things, I'm concerned about my neighbors and the town.
I am concerned. I have listened to folks for several weeks. Yes, I did vote to have the town accept the grant. All of us make the assumption that when the grant is given, it has gone through a review process at the state level, and then it goes through a review process for the buildings at the DRB. And I would assume that we want to have things go through that process as well. I will be listening more. And like my colleague, I'd like to hear both sides of the story. I'm extremely impressed by the list of issues that you have brought up here in frankly, a very cogent way. So I'll be listening.
I also supported the application process. You know, I've been on this board probably longer than anybody else, and I don't think I've ever seen this many people in this room. So, you know, I mean, I'm listening to, I live in the neighborhood, I'm right around the corner from the project. You know, we lived through Nathaniel Court when that was built, and, you know, I'll be listening to everybody else and see, you know, where this goes, where the decision goes.
Jim? You know, I knew when I ran that there was going to come a day like this when I knew there would come a day when I ran, having been around politics all my life, that there would come a day when I would act with it, believing that I was acting in the best interests of the people of Bennington and my neighbors. Now, you know Mr. Frederickson and Mrs. Frederickson and Kevin Callanan and Mr. and Mrs. Kennedy. That was my parents' last neighborhood that they lived in for 30 years. And if you think for a second that I would do something to damage that and damage you folks, you're wrong. I looked at this as carefully as I could, and I loved that neighborhood, and I still do. And I would not act to hurt you. I just want you to know that. And I as probably the most visible selectmen in town, if you think that I haven't heard about it, I hear about it every day, and I am concerned, and I listen, and those of you who have come to, and I've sought many of you out to speak to you directly, Kevin and Mr. and Mrs. Kennedy. Of course this matters to me. And I just want you to know that I would never act against the best interests of all the people of Bennington, and certainly not against you folks.
Justin spoke already. I feel that we're not the deciders of the people, and I think we're here to represent them. And for me, I mean, I know I'm one of the newer ones here, but this is overwhelming. I've never seen this before either. And, you know, I was already against the project in the first place. But even if I wasn't, I'd have to listen and recognize the signatures that came forth, all the great opinions that came forth, and I would say that this would turn the tables for me had I seen this. So I do listen. I think the interaction between the people and the board is what makes its small town really move forward. We aren't the 7 people here trying to just direct everyone. That's not the role that we're playing. So to answer your question, I think it's very important.
Well, and I think just as to add to that, the people that are here are from across this community. They're taxpayers, they're voters, they're citizens who care what direction this community is going. And that is why they are here, I think, in full force tonight to say, please, can we take a step back and look at what we're doing here? I have only 2 more questions. The second written statement appeared in the Bennington Banner on July 12th as a letter to the editor. It was signed by the select board chair. I'd like to know if the statements in that letter represent the position of the board or merely reflect the chair's personal opinions.
I believe it said in the article that I could not speak for the other members of the board, and again, it did have my name on it, not the Bennington Select Board. So yes, that would be an indication that was my response.
And I recall 2 public hearings, one on March 24th, one on May 12th.
Yeah, I got the date wrong.
Is there another hearing on June 9th?
No, I got the date wrong.
Which you stated in the letter?
Yeah, I got the date wrong, Mary. Sorry. I was writing several things at the same time, and I did send it before I corrected that date.
In expressing support for the project as a basis for approving the grant application, several things were cited. Shires owns the property. Is that true? And please demonstrate the basis for that claim.
I do not believe that the closing is happening yet, but they would be the property owner in a development project. So
Your letter said they were the owners.
that was my understanding at the
Number 2,
time.
the project complies with current zoning. Has the DRB already made the determination, or is that not the subject of tomorrow's DRB hearing that we've heard so much about previously from this board?
I've said, and also in the letter, I said, so far, it appears to be a compliant project. So
Now, it appears or it is?
so far it is. I mean, the number of units, the multifamily dwelling, that is all, for 20 years, that property's been zoned that way. So this is not something new to the neighborhood. This is the way that the neighborhood has been zoned. It's been, people have mentioned to me several things that I think are misconceptions. One is that this is a change of zoning or change of use of that property, and that is not the case. So this is a development, a multifamily development in a multifamily zoned area. So to that extent, it is, until it gets through the next phase, as far as we know, it's a compliant project.
As far as you know, but I have a feeling the people that own properties in the condominium section might have a different opinion. The only entity that can stop the project is the owner of the project. Do you seriously believe the town has no rightful say or authority over projects it may determine aren't in the best interest of the community? And if any of you would like to respond to that?
I'd like to respond.
If I can answer to my letter first. It does specifically state that in code that you cannot deny a properly zoned project cannot be denied on a discriminatory matter. That if something is fit for a property and a developer wants to build it there and you've identified that it is a legal use of the property, you cannot arbitrarily deny that.
And that's a DRB decision, I believe.
Right, but at this point, they are not the owners. And
Well, they would be if they developed it. I don't know if they have a back-out clause or
Again,
whatever.
we're having a little bit of appearance of putting the cart before the horse. The town of Bennington
I'm
is
sorry,
not
John.
involved in the project.
I think John wanted to
When the
answer that
project
last.
isn't completed, what's the town's liability for the $700,000 grant? Because it has been alluded that we may be sued somehow. Could someone explain that one?
The explanation of that, and that was from the town attorney, that if an applicant takes on expenses, and this is overall for anything in the process, and they felt, the attorney felt it was worth mentioning, that the town could be held, or a developer could attempt to hold the town liable for expenses they'd incurred after being told that we would accept a grant, if in fact a grant was then denied, or rejected, and a project couldn't go through, or they had to take on other expenses. It does not have any specifics as far as that. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would owe them the grant money, but if engineering studies, developments, or things like that were based on telling them that the grant would be accepted and then changing our mind, someone theoretically could.
I have to find that it's highly unlikely. I mean, it just doesn't make sense from any point of view. I mean, the fact that they could go out and do that, absolutely. But
Right.
they need to come back to us for any future grant proposals in the future.
And I think I did mention that there were no specific indications of that.
The idea
and
that, I just think that the idea that that would happen is preposterous.
Lawyers like you to note that stuff. is
This also
basically
hasn't
what-
been completely accepted yet, right? So there's no action that could be taken by
As far as the grant, you mean?
By Shires, yeah.
No, the application has been accepted, the decision has not been made yet.
Right, so if we were to make our opinion known closer to before that decision was made, then there wouldn't be any expenses and we would no longer be liable.
The earlier you make it, that's, yeah, I suppose on the same theory that you could be sued, that would be.
Okay, two last quick things. You stated that is discrimination. Do you actually believe that the discriminatory factors you suggest are the basis for local opposition? And furthermore, do you also believe the Bennington land use and development regulations are discriminatory as pertains to impacts on the use and character of the neighborhood, on the capacity of community facilities and services, including schools, road, traffic, our service agencies, etc.? Does that constitute arbitrary zoning?
No, arbitrary zoning would be taking a project that was deemed compliant and not letting somebody, and denying it for no other reason than who was developing it or who was going to be occupying the space. That would be discrimination.
And finally, in suggesting that people concerned with the project get involved in constructive conversation with Shires, does the chair believe concerned tax-paying citizens were afforded an adequate opportunity for constructive conversation with the board on the matter of this grant application?
My understanding was that Shires had been reaching out to people in the community for comment, and that they normally do that during a project. So then, and that's what I would like to see. I mean, no matter who's developing something in a neighborhood,
I understand that there is
I'm sorry, please.
There is a discussion that was had about even a survey that was you were supposed to be basing some decisions on, that the need was here in the community. By your own words, Chairman Van Houten, is that you said the survey would not be coming for another possibly couple of months. Is that not, once again, putting the cart before the horse and making decisions that are going to impact these citizens?
You're talking about the housing study? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Mary.
And to the private landlords that were not reached out to. So I'm not sure who you're talking about who was reached out to. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I just have two more letter writers that I wanted to get on record. But Greg, Applejack owns that property. That's what Tim Corcoran told me today.
Yeah, Tim called me and said that the property had not transferred yet. It was my understanding that the purchase had been made, but apparently it has not been finalized.
All right. Dan Amadon.
I'm Dan Amadon, longtime resident, born and bred here in Bennington. What's happening here with the proposed new development is making a bad situation worse. When the town allowed a smooth-talking developer to clear cut once beautiful forest called Hawks Woods, I was shocked and dismayed. When you let him do whatever he wanted with the promise that he would do the right thing, you took it hook, line, and sinker, giving him permission to do whatever he wanted in town. Now, when it's evident that all he cared about was making a buck, abandoning this town, you are left with what you call an eyesore because of clear cutting you allowed. And now you want to fix it. So what's your solution? It's to abandon the idea of having homeowners develop the land and instead place low-income apartments there, declaring to the community that this is the best we could do. The belief seems to be that you'll do this, that in doing this, you will solve the problem of the eyesore, get tax dollars, and give affordable housing to low-income residents. I see the logic in this as seriously flawed. As far as the additional taxes, all I see is our tax dollars going into the project to build it, given subsidies and tax breaks to keep it going, and more tax dollars will be used to maintain it. Does this sound like additional tax dollars, or are we just taking more money out of the taxpayers' pockets? And let's take a look at the second major point, that we need more low-income apartments in this town. Although that's disputed by some, let's go with the scenario that you're actually correct. I do believe everybody deserves a place to live regardless of income. But concentrating the low-income apartments in one area only benefits the developers. Why not spread the apartments? Why not spread the apartments throughout the community rather than concentrating them in one area, which is what you are proposing with this project? Creating affordable housing by revitalizing dilapidated houses is the way to go, not cramming them all together so greedy developers can make the most profit. So here we are again, trying to fix something you allowed to happen years ago. Stop making things worse with this defeatist attitude that this is the best the town deserves. Have a little hope. Have a little faith. You should have realized after the last developer that came through the town that maybe the townspeople were right after all. So start listening and do the right thing and vote to pass over this grant for this type of project.
Jean McKenna, I'm sorry I'm bumping people, but I've waited long enough. To go back to the May 12th meeting, and you guys have said you want to hear both sides of it. Mr. Broderick gave information to the board about a half hour or whatever right before the board meeting. He then stood up, did his presentation, told everybody the facts. We weren't able to get information until afterwards. So we had no chance to give our side, to prove what he said is wrong or not. We'd asked to be on the agenda, we keep getting turned down. I have a pile of facts I'd love to tell people if we could only get our voices heard. And that's why we keep coming here tonight, to get our voices heard. Information was slow in coming. When I asked for Mr. Harrington for the application, although it was warned that he had applications available, when I asked, I was put off past the date that would have allowed us to open the discussion again. The fair process is what we're here about. And I won't go on too long, but you got me for a while. off script, but 6 of us went to Montpelier last week to let them know, because they do have a process in which people were able to speak and give information. We forwarded everything we had to them so that they could make the right decision, and hopefully they will. They know 600-plus people do not want this. They do not seem concerned or all out of shape if we turn it down. They said that's why you have another meeting. If it's approved by then, you have another meeting because you may have different board members. Other things might have occurred, they might have learned. So the nonsense that we're not going to get more grants down the road, nonsense. So what I'd like to talk about for a few minutes is what exactly Shire's housing is. And when I speak, if there's anything you guys want, I have everything to back it up. I'm not talking randomly. So from their website, Shire's Housing is a 501c not-for-profit housing development corporation serving Bennington County. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but so just so you guys know what a not-for-profit is a type of organization that does not earn profits for its owners. All the money earned by or donated to a not-for-profit organization is used in pursuing the organization's objectives. Except for the distinguishing feature that a not-for-profit organization does not distribute profits to its owners, many non-profits have much in common with for-profit organizations. For example, it could have a full staff, as Mr. Broderick is one of. But then you look at their mission statement, and I think this is very important. Their mission statement, and I'm not going to read all of them, is to create new affordable rental units and homeownership opportunities, promoting a sense of pride in the community by upgrading existing neighborhoods through renovation and restoration of existing home stock, restoration and reuse of distressed historical buildings and other infill projects to create vibrant downtowns, investing in neighborhoods which acts as a catalyst for additional upgrades by other property owners. This project does not fit their mission statement. This is not what Shire's Housing organization is around to do. Some other things you might not know. There is a direct correlation between the number of assets Shire's has and the amount of pay the executive gets. So as the assets go up, the pay goes up. And although Mr. Broderick, he would not provide me with financial statements, got it, can back it up. Tenants, once they're in their units, if their income goes above the required rates, they get to stay there. They are not forced out. They are not asked to find some other kind of housing. So in fact, Shires can make a supply and demand. If these people who no longer needed assistance were asked to go and get into other apartments or houses, we would have plenty of low-income housing. Market study that says 2% or less, they never asked any of the landlords. What they used was January, February 2013, and if you advertised in Banner or Craigslist, that's how they came up with it. When they opened North Branch Street, they offered free rent to get tenants. They put their rents below market rates intentionally. They said at the meeting they used local contractors. Mr. Carroll, you were very interested in that. If Brandon is local, that's what they use for the North Branch Street. And then why he is selling it is work class, when in the application he has applied, and it states that he has applied for every low-income credit available. So who does it benefit and hurt? And I'm almost done. Let's just quickly do it, I'm sorry. No, maybe I don't have it. Oh, I do. Okay, so who is it going to help? 24 tenants that will get to live there. It's going to benefit Shire's Housing, who, as long as these apartments are full, will make money, and it will benefit contractors, although they may or may not be local. Who's this project going to hurt? The independent landlord, who will have a harder time running their apartment, 600-plus school children who may have to be redistricted, local taxpayers who will have to pay higher school tax when there's not enough room for all the kids in the school, state taxpayers who have to fund the state health insurance, which many of these potential renters will qualify for, the elderly who are already financially stressed, children and child services, bringing more children into the state and put an even bigger stress on an already stressed system. So I asked Mr. Broderick that he and his organization withdraw this project. I don't know why their board would allow the project, since it is not part of their mission statement, to move forward. Why one near Friendly's and why North Branch Street? I think they need to regroup, go back to what their mission is, and then come back to the public doing what their mission is. Outrage, Mr. Broderick, you need from a town before you decide your project is a bad idea. I'll tell you, it grows every day. It's not going away.
Jean, that's why I wanted to save you for last, because you had all kind of good stuff.
I've got more when we get on the agenda.
Kathy Hoisington was my last speaker that I'd like to get on record. Are you?
You know, thank you very much, but I think you've all been brilliant. I wasn't with you in the beginning. You spoke so well. I give up my place. Let's do that.
Then I can close with, hope you will all be in, what? We've got one more. I'm sorry.
I'll be brief. Hard to believe, isn't it? First of all, I have a couple of daughters and want to thank John and Justin for trying to take care of the neighborhood.
Did you see Amelia Silver?
Yeah. I appreciate everything you do. I work for the Department of Health. My name is Judith Fellows-Miller, and I've lived here for 33 years. Been, according to my daughters, trying to defend the neighborhood for 35. I think it's important maybe to end it, to get a sense of moving forward. And I know Greg is concerned about funding, but the Vermont Department of Health is working with regional commissions for the first time. We no longer talk about grants to deal with substance abuse, which is what my field is. We talk about transformation grants and we talk about combined grants. And the reason we do that is we know that in order to promote health, we have to work together. We can't have a singular approach, we have to have a comprehensive approach. So down the road, and I'm sure if you talk to Jim Sullivan from the Regional Commission, he will explain to you how important it is, and the grant money is coming, where we will all work together for the same purpose, and that is to design a community, create a design where we can promote health, where our kids can walk, run, play, and we can all work together, play together, and become healthier people. And our community design has to promote that, and we all have to be a part of that solution. But the money is coming, and there is hope that we can move forward and talk about some of those solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to remind all you folks that it would be nice if you'd come to the Development and Review Board tomorrow. And in summary, I would hope the burdensome conditions that we've brought forward, that we don't need it, 600 people don't want it, it raises school taxes, there's no green space, and unlike Rutland, which is de-densifying and creating neighborhoods, we're densifying and destroying neighborhoods. Thank you.
Point of order.
Yes?
There is a conflict of interest. This is a member of the Community Development Grant Board speaking at this. I
think that's, comments are coming before a board that did not, should not be having any information from someone who's deciding on a grant that has not been decided.
The decision has been made, actually, Mary, and I didn't vote on the decision. I recused myself from the vote. So the decision has already been made by the Community Development Board. So if you're, the information that I have to offer right now and the comments I have to offer are as a resident. I know that my name is Amelia Silver, and you're going to get to all boo and hiss now because you're going to hear a little bit from the other side. And since you're all good Americans, you like to hear a debate and you like to hear both sides. I know that there was some concern about some of the citizens who did come up to the Community Development Board meeting last week that I might influence a decision because apparently Representative Morrissey told the members of the board that my husband was on the Shire's board. Not true. Not true. Not true. Well, somebody said it, and
Ms. Morrissey, folks could...
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but the fact is, it's not my husband.
order.
I will not have untrue statements.
This is what I was told. My husband's not on the board. I don't have a husband.
Folks, I'm going to recess for 5 minutes, let everybody calm down a little bit. We're not going to have arguments. We can take a 5-minute recess, and everybody can just, if you can shut the camera, or just pause the camera, I mean. Well, I'm not going to have people yelling over, I'll just take a second.
My name's Amelia Silver. I live in Pownell. I've lived in Bennington since 1990. My former husband and I raised our 2 children here, and I love Bennington. I love this town. I love everything about it. I love the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've worked for the last 10 years at Sunrise Family Resource Center. I'm the development director there right now, but I worked as a family advocate and as an outreach worker for about 6 years, working with the really, really low-income people, some of the teen parents in our community that you all are very aware of. And I know that Kathy Hoisington's letter to the Banner referred to that issue, which is a whole other issue. But really, why I wanted to talk today, why I wanted to stand up, and it is a little nerve-wracking to do so in a room where I know it's a pretty hostile group here. I just wanted to speak on behalf of what I see as the really, really great work that Shire's Housing has done in Bennington. It used to be called RAC, Regional Affordable. RAC sounded terrible. I guess it was good that they changed their name. I don't know, I imagine most of you, because you care so much about this neighborhood and care so much about Bennington, you're familiar with some of the other RAC projects or Shire's projects. In every neighborhood that I know of where Shire's Housing has renovated, and it's true, as Jean said, their mission statement talks a lot about renovation and rehab, and that's been their primary action in this community. In every place where they've done that, the neighborhood has been significantly improved. You can just look at Benmont Avenue and those buildings there that are really so kind of elegant. They look like real New England, but they've been restored to their former simple beauty. Carrigan Lane, South Street, and the Roaring Branch development, which is really just so beautiful. These are not low-income housing as you're all thinking about it. This is low to moderate income. I know that I have, I think, what's called a moderate income, and I actually probably couldn't afford to live in some of these units because they're priced a little bit higher than what I can afford. I'm a professional, I'm a lawyer, formerly. I work full-time. I'm 57 years old, and I probably couldn't afford to live in some of those units. So we're not talking about the riffraff. We're not talking about a huge drain on social services. And in fact, the select board wouldn't be permitted to think about those things anyway, because that would be a complete violation of fair housing law. But for the rest of us, we are allowed to talk about that, and that's not what's going to happen in this neighborhood. I heard from so many of you who live near there, and you talked about the personal impact on you and the loss of those woods, and I can empathize with that. The loss of those woods it sounds very sad, and I can imagine that that's something you don't really get over. To compare John Broderick and Shires Housing to Jack Appelman and his development, it's apples and oranges. Shires Housing is a 501c3. This is not a greedy developer. I really, really felt pain when I heard people stand up here and talk about this housing organization that has improved our community as a greedy developer. This is not a greedy developer. This is not a profit-making company. This is a company that has come into Bennington and has been renovating decrepit old properties for a long time and improving neighborhoods. And the neighborhood that we're talking about here, Silver Street, I work a block and a half from there on Union Street. Now, if there's some magical thing that happens a block and a half up on Silver Street that suddenly makes this beautiful, charming neighborhood that is going to be violated by Shires development, I'm living in another universe. I work a block and a half away from where this thing is going to happen.
Amelia, are you forgetting whose money that goes to? It's us taxpayers
Doris,
that are paying for its renovations.
Please don't interrupt. Please don't interrupt her.
Okay. You know what? I don't want to get into an argument. I just want to say my piece. I didn't interrupt when anybody else was talking up here, and you all had a long time to talk. I know that local landlords are upset because Shires Housing offers really, really nice apartments at a reasonable rent. There are a lot of apartments in this town that are not reasonably priced and that are not in good repair. The town has a revolving loan fund that landlords can borrow from to improve their apartments and their buildings, and they do. Regional Affordable Shires Housing is not a profit-making company. They are creating attractive, livable housing for working people. I wrote down a few things because I really was, I guess Mr. Fredericks talked about a drastic change in the neighborhood, and that's what I wanted to go back to. I work a block and a half away. That neighborhood's kind of a mixed neighborhood, kind of sketchy at times. Not always, not. I work on Union Street. I work on Union Street. We have a lot of accidents and a lot of things that go on Union Street every day. I've been working there for 10 years. So this is not a neighborhood where some terrible new unit is going to come in full of bad people. These are going to be working people like you all. Yeah, they are. Well,
folks,
you can look at the people who are living in the other Shires Housing projects, and you can. I know that the projection for this project is that there will be a number of elderly people who can live there. This is not subsidized housing. It's not Section 8 housing. People who have Section 8 may be eligible to live there, but this is not project-based Section 8. So I think that there's some misinformation that people have, and I understand it. I think it's fear. It's fear that your neighborhood is going to be destroyed. And I think if you take a look around at all the different projects that Shires is responsible for and maintains, you'll see that your neighborhood isn't going to be destroyed. It really, I guess, the last thing I want to say, I mean, I could say a lot of things. The last thing I want to say is that I personally felt, I understand where it's coming from because I think people are feeling really threatened. But I really take umbrage at somebody suggesting that John Broderick's offer to talk about landscaping was blackmail. That is slanderous, and it personally hurt me. This is a person who is working, giving to this community, and I, as a resident of this community and as a citizen of this community, want you to know I think that that was really, really shabby. And if anybody has any questions in the next couple of weeks about the Community Development Board process, I'd be happy to answer it. A bunch of you came up last week, which I thought was great.
Isn't that what she's not supposed to talk about?
I know that the board was very interested to hear from you and got all your letters. We read all your letters and took it very seriously,
Right.
so thank you.
Isn't that what she's not supposed to talk about?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that what she's not supposed to talk
Yeah.
about?
Greg.
I was told, that's what I was told, Mary.
Okay.
Well, I didn't have a reason to doubt it. I'm sorry, Mary. You know that I didn't,
Ms. Silver, are we?
you know, I didn't mean to say anything bad about you, just as I'm sure you didn't mean to say something bad about me, right?
All right, folks.
Well, somebody in the group did.
Can we have, Mr. Zink wanted to speak next, I believe. You're going to yell? Okay, go ahead then. Ms. McKenna?
A couple things I didn't, we weren't going to get into facts tonight. We would save it for an agenda. Why is it going to ruin the neighborhood? Around, the area around, the 3 acres around, there are 18 residents who live in the 3 acres. On the 3 acres where the apartments are going to be, based on information that was in the application, you could have up to 80 to 90 people. That's going to ruin traffic, that's noise. Just that alone would ruin a neighborhood. These are the things that we weren't able to tell you guys. And do you go into it? Maybe you only have 5 kids. But does the town go in it proactively or reactively? Let's assume it's only 5. If it's only 5, then great. Then it's fantastic. We have no issues. What if, because we know with the Fair Housing Act, you can't turn people away if they qualify. What if we have the 36 kids? Then what do we do? And that's, as responsible citizens, we're coming to you and say, let's be proactive about this and make sure the ducks are in a row and that we can handle the people that are there before this moves forward. And I don't want to come before you and everybody at home to think that we aren't caring citizens. What Mr. Broderick has done and the organization, the houses around the towns, we have no problems with that. We think that is fantastic. It does help the neighborhoods, and we'd love to see that happen again. The program that he has keeps bringing more people into the assisted living. It does not seem to be moving them as a bridging to the next step, which is either buying a condo, getting a better home, buying a home, you know. So that's what we would like to see, is this as a bridge that once your income is higher, then you're moved along, coached along during this whole process, either learning finances or education or something that would get you to the next step, which is the American dream, to own a house. To just keep putting these houses around, it's not helping these people. You're giving them a new apartment for, what, are they going to be there 5 years, 10 years? Is that what they get out of life, is here's your lower income, you know, lower rent? Or do you actually help these people by having programs and let them move along to the next step? I think we have enough of the large apartments. If you go and start doing them here and there like they did, I see no problem with that. And I think people in town feel the same way. And even, this is 5.5 million or in that neighborhood. If for these 24 people, you spent $100,000, got them a house, coached them through, you can't just give them the keys, that's $2.4 million. Tax base increases, houses sell, they're no longer around the system. We need to look at the system and revamp it.
My name is Tim Morrissey. I'm a taxpayer and a resident of Bennington. My neighbors on Grandview Street, Mark and Fronia Simpson, unfortunately could not attend tonight's meeting because of prior commitment. However, they asked me to read the following prepared statement on their behalf. John Broderick, Executive Director of Shires Housing, makes it clear in the Vermont Community Development Program grant application for the Monument View development off Silver Street that the site has been chosen largely because it is bureaucratically expedient. Thanks to zoning clearances Jack Appleman obtained when he planned to build a condominium complex there 8 years ago. Note, these were owner-occupied condominiums, though, not rental units. Many in the neighborhood at the time opposed the Appleman project because of the decimation of the open recreational space known as Hawks Woods that it entailed and the changes to the neighborhood that would follow. But the town, gripped by Appleman fever and lured by all he promised for Bennington as a whole, acceded to his wishes. Mr. Appleman has now largely vanished from the scene, and those promises are, with few exceptions, unfulfilled. Now it seems to us would be the time for the town to consider the way our residential area in this southeast quadrant of the town center should be developed, rather than to act without study on an opportunistic attempt to follow through on Appleman's plans with change. This could be a chance for the town to think about what would be best for both its development and its preservation and conservation, keeping a balance between renovation and tradition. Why shouldn't this southeast quadrant of the downtown have some of the same residence-enhancing amenities like one-way streets, community open spaces that are elsewhere? Can't regain the original woods that Mr. Appleman so callously, and as it turns out, because of fraudulently, needlessly, left. Some measure of what was lost might be regained, however, if the town were to make a park-like environment, open space, playground, trees, plantings. This would provide a place for those children who now play on the sidewalks and the neighborhood's already busy streets to gather. It might yield an option for another community garden. Certainly provide an urban amenity that many of the apartment and condominium dwellers in the neighborhood would use and appreciate, as well as offering a green focal point for all residents of this portion of town. "24 more rental units," that is the number currently proposed by Shires.
I did not do that.
In a small neighborhood that already has a significant number of rental units, would obviously tip the existing balance among single and multiple family units. There have been no public statements about plans for the middle portion of the former Hawks Woods, the area that was divided into thirds in 2013. But it would be surprising, given the recent past, if further construction developments were not in the offing. Consequence of this, in all probability, would be the conversion of yet more single-family units to multiple family dwellings, changing the character of the place. More traffic, more noise, more congestion. This would shift the feel of an established residential neighborhood decidedly away from its historic and still palpable past. Moreover, if this happens, some fine examples of circa 1900 domestic architecture will be significantly altered or perhaps lost. So the town, which prides itself on its history, will lose still more of the physical remains of that history. And it is, of course, those physical remains that appeal to visitors and residents alike. We wonder what kind of town the Select Board wants Bennington to become. This isn't to speak against what Shires Housing has achieved in Bennington. The rehabilitation of the property on the corner of Route 7 and Prospect Street, the units next to Friendly's, both within, by the way, a stone's throw of the proposed Monument View project, and elsewhere appear to be extremely successful. But if we turn to Shire's own statements of what it does in terms of neighborhoods, we see something curious. To quote from its website, and apologies here because I'm repeating what Jean mentioned earlier, Shire's Housing works at promoting a sense of pride in the community by upgrading existing neighborhoods through renovation and restoration of existing housing stock, restoration and reuse of distressed historic buildings and other infill projects to create vibrant downtowns, investing in neighborhoods which acts as a catalyst for additional upgrades by other property owners. We would submit that the immediate neighborhood surrounding the proposed project does not require upgrading. That, in fact, a number of homes in the immediate vicinity have in recent years been renovated and restored. That 24 more rental units and whatever happens in that remaining third of the former Hawks Woods are not likely to prompt other property owners to upgrade their homes, but rather might act as a catalyst for action in the other direction. It should be noted that the blocks bounded by Route 7 and Silver Street, from Hillside south to Prospect Street, already have a dynamic mix of single-family, owner-occupied, multiple family, and rental units, as well as a significant number of multiple family developments. Of the latter, in addition to the extant Shires project, there are Silver Street apartments, the Nathaniel Court, and Applewood condominiums, and across Route 7, the 50-unit Brookside Apartments, which is a Bennington Housing Authority property. If the last big open space in the vicinity is to be used, we believe our town ought ponder the best use of that parcel of land, now that Appleman fever has abated. Mr. Broderick addresses the question of open land when he writes in a letter posted on the town of Bennington's website, green space. A concern was raised about the amount of green space that would be preserved if the development were constructed. While the vacant lot in question was once a wooded area that was used frequently by neighbors for recreation, the current owner has granted permits to construct housing there in 2006 and subsequently cleared the lot. The currently permitted plan allows for the construction of 28 additional units in 14 duplex buildings. Shire Housing has proposed reducing the density from 28 to 24 units and reducing the number of buildings from 14 to 7, including 2 small apartment buildings. The footprints of the proposed building will be significantly smaller than, of course, the currently permitted plan. That is what Shire's Housing proposes. Is better, of course, than what could happen. With this, we have to agree. But it is not, we think, the best thing that could happen, which would be to provide a place for people to gather in a green, tree-full space, and to minimize rather than continue the harm that Appleman and Appleman fever perpetrated in 2006. It is not at all clear that the Monument View development addresses what would be good for the town as a whole or this neighborhood in particular. We feel that our town leaders ought act with those goals in mind rather than endorse an expedient plan that takes advantage of what many feel was a misguided decision back in 2005 and 2006. Mark Fronia Simpson. Thank you.
Thanks.
Do I touch the microphone?
No, it'll, Bob.
Hi. For everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Mary Bennett, and I have the most fantastic job in the world, which is the Bennington area for Habitat and Humanity. It's a close sister to what's going on tonight, other than our goal and their mission is to put people in actual homes, homes that are existing, that perhaps need renovations, new homes. The idea is to give people a chance to own, not to grow up in projects, not to go from one housing development to another, but to be homeowners. Homeowners who work, perhaps low to moderate income. In fact, a family of 3 has the same exact amount of money to qualify for a home through the Habitat as through the Southshires. There is no difference, other than we're building pride. We're building people who pay taxes, people who work, people who have families, and, which I have not heard once tonight, these are residents of Vermont. One of the requirements is that you must be a resident of Vermont. I, of course, am a landlord, which sometimes I would not like to be, but still, tonight I see landlords, I see politicians, I see homeowners, I see people in this town that care about the town. I see people like John Shanahan, who since he landed back here has been trying to beautify Bennington. I mean, that's what our focus should be. Not building projects, not attracting low-income people to our town who are not going to pay taxes. It matters not if they work. They can have families, certainly. I mean, as many children as they wish. And what are they doing? They're taking money from us, money from people who work. I also own a farm. I work. I love to work, but it's hard work. I provide for my family. I'm a Vermonter. I'm 4 generations back in this town. And to even consider putting projects in any neighborhood. I have 30 acres on the West End. I wouldn't sell it. I've had offers like crazy. Projects? Are you kidding? For my town? No. We have enough projects. We know the names of them. They're called lower income housing. And now, this organization that's here tonight, which was RAC at one point, have bought a few homes, remodeled them, kind of made them look pretty on the outside, winterized them, and guess what? They're still renting. Nobody owns them. No one pays the taxes who is living there. People work, they pay their taxes. The next thing is, there was some debate tonight on whether the development by Mr. Appleman, if another person perhaps wanted to purchase it, if it somehow is grandfather claused in. Now I ask you, I am not an attorney, and I know on your board you have an attorney. There must be something that if another person came in with cash in hand to buy that we have enough, strong enough members on our board and our town to oppose it. I think it's clear statement here with everyone, with 600 signatures, for which I wasn't even one. We don't want this. It's not a question of in our neighborhood. It's not the focus on Bennington. It's not why John Shanahan and all the landlords work and pay their taxes. Our focus is to bring Bennington back. We need the small community. We need jobs. It is nobody's fault there are no jobs here, but we need jobs. We don't need to attract lower income people. At my standard, I'm considered low income. Do I work? Yes. Would I qualify for a rack house or a house for humanity? Absolutely. Which one would I choose? Which is a better example for my children? Owning a home, paying taxes, or living in a project and renting? 5, 10 years, I think somebody said, and let's move on to another town. And then we can have the same thing. And how many of these people have 4 generations back? I guarantee you very, very few. Thank you.
Good evening. I know you don't need another person talking. I'm going to be brief. My name is John Zink, and I've served this community for 36 years. 6 of them on the select board, 30 of them on the west. I've been watching this development, and I've been watching these folks here dealing with this issue, and I really feel that there's been a lot of wonderful points made this evening, and I'm not going to rehash or read my notes regarding that because it pretty much echoes what's already been said. But 6 years as a select board member, I sat during the budgetary issues, which all of you have been through, Saturday morning after Saturday morning, surviving on coffee and donuts, which I don't need. During the review of the town budget, we found that due to substantial loss of industrial revenue and an ever-increasing school tax burden, that we had to make serious decisions on the board, and you do too, about what budgetary restraints we have to put on our particular agencies and projects that we might be developing through the town. This is to provide our taxpayers with a budget and a tax rate that they can afford. Unfortunately, in recent years, it hasn't gotten any better. And just a week ago, we lost 2 or 3 more businesses, including Greenberg's, which was a shock, I'm sure, to everyone. We are losing businesses, we are losing jobs, and we are losing ways for our children to stay here. I have 3 sons. One of them stayed, and he works for the state. And you may see him someday, he'll be out with the lights. Okay. The only reason he probably stayed and didn't follow his 2 older brothers is because he happens to have a government job, like I had for 30 years. Unfortunately, the options for our people are shrinking, and we're continuing to get ourselves into things that we really haven't thought out carefully. Given the fact that the Shires project falls in a category of subsidized housing, and I looked this over carefully. This is subsidized housing, partially paid by investors, partially paid by taxes, partially paid by the individuals that they can pay. Now, I've heard the word affordable housing spoke, and I've also heard figures put out as to what affordable housing should be and who qualifies. And every time I hear the numbers are lower than what our state considers of income for a family of 4. So affordable housing is more like subsidized housing, as far as I'm concerned, unless someone can prove differently to me. Housing like this will not produce any tax revenues or budgetary supplements to our community. I respectfully request to this board that they reconsider. Now, Stu brought it out, that you should vote against it, but you don't have to vote for it. And that appears to be the issue here. I would hope that every one of you, like I have had to do, but Sharon, you and I struggled through a lot of things together on this board, that the issue should be taken home and deeply thought on in your heart. Jim, you said you were offended, you were hurt. I heard you. You said that you didn't think the people were thinking that you thought this out well. I know you. You are a very caring and concerned person. And I know that you will give this the thought it needs. And everyone else here, you wouldn't be sitting there for the money, I know that. Okay? And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, they probably make about 40 cents an hour. Okay? If they make that. All right. So, I think what we've heard here tonight and what the board has heard is something that we can all go home and think about and try to do what's the right thing and the fair thing. And you'll find that in your heart. Thank you very much.
Sure.
My name is Ken Swear, and I'm the chair of the Bennington School Board. And I'd like to just give you some information about the school system up to date. I spoke with our business manager this morning, and he was telling me that the Democratic legislature in Montpelier this last year did nothing to fix the funding formula, and we're looking at an 8 to 10% increase just from the state. Now, that doesn't include what we would have to put in there for our kids. And we know the last two budgets here in Bennington both went down. We had to have multiple votes, which cost more for the taxpayers. And let me tell you about the population. Monument School is packed, 24, 25 in a class up there. Bennell is packed. We have no extra room. A matter of fact, I don't know if you know this, but we're renting the old child care center on Division Street from the hospital. They've given it to us for $1 plus expenses. They're refurbishing the whole thing for us so we can move some classes out of Molly Stark and take some out of Bennell to ease up our conditions because we're really packed, there's no room. Now, this piece of propaganda we got here where they're saying 5 to 7 elementary school kids. I used to be on the zoning board, I'm on a planning commission, and it's always 1.5. So we could be looking at 25 more kids, which would, they don't come all in one class. So we could have to hire maybe 1 teacher more, 2 teachers more, maybe another sped individual. This all costs money. Added to the way we're budgeting right now, it's really tough because when we look at a 10-cent increase before we look at our income, which the health insurance is going up, salaries go up for teachers, we just can't absorb that all the time. And with all these youngsters coming in, it's a difficult thing for us to handle. Again, 21 kids, 28 kids, it's still a lot. Right now in Bennell, we have, I think, 1 bus that comes in a day because most of the kids in Bennell walk to school. What would happen if these kids live closer, then they would get the bus and we'd have to bus these other kids over to Molly Stark or something, which would put an additional bus on, which is $25,000. Thanks to Mr. Hurd and his assistant, we're going to look forward in another year or so to have that walkway between Willowbrook and so forth. We can eliminate 1 bus that comes around. So that was working nice with the town getting that. It's just tough. We don't want to pick on individuals who live in what they make, and that's their business and stuff like that. But again, I would hope that you would think about this, as everybody else has been saying. And I don't think it's good at the present time for the community to absorb another group of people that are going to come in and be a cost. Do the people have to work? I mean, if the person starts to work and then they lose their job, do they get like full rent paid for? What surprises me the most is, and again, I don't like to advertise for places, but all these got signs in there. They're looking for people, they pay them $25,000 a year, full medical, full health, the whole 9 yards. If a husband and wife would rotate morning, afternoon shifts, they could make $50,000 with health insurance and everything else. I think there's a lot of people that don't want to work. And I think that they're looking for every advantage they can to do this. I mean, I would tell people, go there, go to work. I mean, there's signs all over town, not only for houses for sale, but job openings. I had a youngster that used to work at NASDAQ. He told me 75% of the applicants at NASDAQ were getting turned down because of drugs in their system. So how can they get a job anyways? It's just tough. But again, one other thing I think is important. In Bennell, we have 80% free lunches. That means those are the people that are below that $35,000. 80%. Molly's 78%. So again, if we add more people with low income, we're going to be up to like 85%. And that's not healthy for kids going to school if they're all in the same category. It's nice to have people from poor sections, moderate, and rich, and they can go and be friends and interact with each other. But if we just have 85% of the people who make no money at all, it's tough. And those poor kids getting up, they don't have role models. If any of you, have seen or read anything about Bill Cosby lately, about police coming out and saying, you know, family is a husband and a wife, and, you know, everybody's working, and they're role models, to be two mothers and two fathers who are role models, and I think that's, we're looking, but I think a lot of these units that are rented are like to a young lady and maybe their 1 or 2 children. Then how many people move in afterwards once they get these people, you know, in there? And I know he writes in here this propaganda about, you know, if someone else wants to move in, they have to go through the same process. But if they don't go into the main office and say, I'm moving in, they just move in, it's pretty hard to move up. And I hear that's some of the big problems they have here in town.
Mike Bethel from Bennington. I'd like to I think these people have been great. I've been watching on TV, and you're fantastic. It's a spirit of what Bennington used to be like, when people used to speak up about what they wanted in town, what they didn't want in town. And I applaud you very much. What I'd like to do is clarify a couple of maybe legal points. What is the next step? If you get the grant and it's approved, it comes before this board, correct?
Correct.
You then vote from the board to give it to Shires or not give it to Shires? Is that the next legal step?
Yeah, we covered this earlier. It would be a
I know
warned.
you covered it earlier,
Yeah,
but it was
it'd be,
confusing the way you covered it.
it would be a warned agenda item.
Right.
And then it would require a motion and a vote, a second, and a vote up and down to
You have an
to
open
award it.
meeting where these people again can tell what the reason that they do or don't want this to go forward, correct?
Correct.
Has the grant been approved, did somebody say?
It has not. There has not been a decision yet.
You know.
That we know of. I spoke to Mr. Broderick today. They had not heard a response on the award.
So then legally, you guys can
Well-
say, no, we're gonna send this grant back, we do not approve it. That's basically it, correct?
Correct.
So that's the next step for these people to watch and listen for, is for you people to get notice to them and the public that you've received the grant and it's been approved or not approved.
Right, and that's the grant. Now, the building project itself,
I'm not talking about
yeah,
that.
has a
Don't
DRB
confuse the
review.
issue.
Well, I want to make sure other people aren't
But
getting
no,
confused the
I'm
two.
up here right now, you can say that in your own time.
But that is the grant.
The grant right
Correct.
now is what's gonna make this project, we believe, move forward, if they get the 700,000. They're not gonna probably do it, I don't think. Mr. Broderick, have you spoken? Are you gonna do this without the 700,000? Do you know?
It's not,
It's not a Q&A period right here.
I think that would be up to their board.
Well, it'll be up to
You know,
the board.
yeah.
But does anybody on this board know if they could move forward without the 700,000?
Yes, they could.
They could
Yeah.
legally, but
Yes.
could they financially?
I don't know their they would have to get the financing to complete the project
You haven't asked
elsewhere.
that question yet?
Yeah, and if they decided to move forward without the grant, they would have to make up the $700,000 with investments.
You don't know that they do have the 700,000 without the grant?
Correct,
You do not know that?
correct.
So you're gonna go, and these people go on the assumption that if this grant does not get approved by this board, it's gonna be a deterrent for this project, correct?
It would be a financial burden for them. Deterrent could be a word, but
Urge this board, when you get the opportunity, all of you, whichever way you voted, to change your mind and send this grant back. This bunch of folks here, and the majority of people in Bennington, do not want this. And I urge this board, start listening to what the people want, what we need in this town. Greenberg's going out is the canary in the tunnel, and there probably was many canaries before it. We need to take Mr. Hurd and his staff and concentrate on jobs, growth, do forums on how to grow Bennington's population the right way, growing the downtown the right way. Have forums on small business association members from upstate to come down here and encourage entrepreneurism for our town. We do not need any more, and I can benefit from Mr. Broderick's project very much, but enough is enough. We need to grow Bennington's economy. I think these people have said it in all different ways. I'm saying it clear to you. If you people want to get reelected, or if you really believe in Bennington, you got to start listening to the people and do something to get the administration to come up with some ideas and plans to fill the downtown stores, let Northside Drive grow, change Johnson Controls so we can have revenues coming in, and do something useful for this town rather than just looking for the easy grant money and think you've accomplished something. Thank you.
minute or less. I'm done. I know you've had enough of me. I just want to remind people, home or here, the next step in this process is tomorrow night, 6:30 here, DRB meeting. We need you to come. We need them to see that we are against it. We need everybody there.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Folks, I just want to say something. I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank you for the articulate comments. There was, I've heard this conversation obviously between meetings. I've heard venom in statements. I've heard confusion and things. This was very, very helpful and very articulate and very civil. And that's what I look for. And I'm actually very proud to serve when that happens. So thank you very much. We're going to take if that's everyone, I'm going to take a short recess so people can get about their business, and then we'll go on with the agenda. Thank you. We're going to move one item up to the BBC work plan and budget. John Shanahan, Executive Director of the BBC, is going to present that. John, welcome.
Thanks, everybody. I think in your packets, you should all have a copy of our 2014-2015 annual budget and work plans from each one of our committees. Why are you laughing at me?
Oh,
yawning.
She's here.
Oh.
You're yawning on both sides of me here.
Sorry.
You should be getting used to this by now. All right, go ahead.
Real quickly, I'll just open it up for questions, basically, but you'll see the budget. It's not too different. We've added a few activities and a few programs since last year, but the budget for the 5th year in a row remains the same in the amount that we are asking for. However, we have added quite a bit of activity in the fact that now we're supporting some organizations like Saturday, as an example, who have events that we also go in and help them with road closings, preparations, and promotions. We had a pretty successful year with the activities that we did do, and just submitting the budget request this year, the same amount as we have in the past.
Okay. Any questions, board?
Yeah.
Michael?
Can you talk about membership and whether membership is growing?
Sure. Membership, well, it's growing over 2013. However, with the addition of most of the programs and activities that we started last year, we kind of dropped the ball on renewed membership, and I'd like to thank the residents who have renewed their membership. It's been all sent out now. It just went about a year and a half instead of a year. So, but it is a little greater than it has been in past years. Other than that, sponsorship is still lower than it was about 3 or 4 years ago, but we're starting to see a turnaround in that as well.
Okay.
A couple of new large sponsors. But our effort will be on expanding membership this year.
Okay.
Outside of the district, because we do also represent a lot of the businesses. Members are Country Club, Kevin's Restaurant, and places like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Should be noted, the BBC has been part of the Bennington Economic Development Strategy from the get-go. Has been a great partner with the other organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, Regional Commission, BCIC, in discussions on growing businesses downtown. It's been people from other parts of the state and the organizations have mentioned to me that that is not the norm, and that we actually are recognized for that kind of cooperation. So thank John and the organization for that. We need a motion to...
You need a motion to accept the DIC operating grant, $69,948.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Jim made the motion. A second?
Yes.
Michael, second. Is there any discussion on that?
Just how long has that been in that approximate range, John?
I believe 7 years, 6 or 7 years. I've been with the organization now 6, and it hasn't changed since then.
It's been
I believe
about
it was
7.
a few years prior to that.
Yeah, it's close to 9, and it hasn't been a significant change, I think, is my recollection.
And actually what happens, Tom, just to clarify, when the board sets this budget, this generates a tax bill for the Downtown Improvement District members And we've actually seen the tax rate go down because we have seen some growth in the downtown grant list. So by maintaining the same level of grant, we're actually seeing the tax rate for downtown businesses decrease slightly every year.
John, do you think that the board would be looking for, to become more aggressive on this in the future, looking for increases or any increased programs?
Well, it is in discussion at the BBC board level at this point to look at it this year. With the district having expanded, like Stu had mentioned, the rate has actually gone down for a couple of years in a row because we've added like the Vermont Voltage Soccer Academy, which used to be the school
Tax
property.
exempt, right.
And now it's online, and there's a few other properties similar where for the individual landowners downtown, it's been going down, down, down. We've talked about a couple of different ideas, but we're going to research it throughout the year before we come before the board next year, of maybe a flat tax rate so that as downtown continues to grow, then our funding will keep up with the projects and activities we do with the additional growth.
Okay, thank you.
As just one of the ideas at this point.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
Just
You have a motion?
one more.
Oh, one more question, go ahead.
Staffing needs and how you're making out with staffing and how you're really slim staffed.
It's the same staff. It's, I'm the one full-time position. The assistant, Diane, is a 20-hour-a-week person, and then the rest is volunteers. They run the Welcome Center. They help with events and activities. We have an intern helping us now with the membership to get that all out. If, in part of the discussions at the BBC board, with the idea of coming back to the select board next year of an increase, it would be for additional hours for the assistant to help us keep on top of not only the membership, but the increased activity that we're doing, but also looking at a person to work on the streets as far as litter, graffiti, working with merchants, a tighter outreach program, which all of that right now I do or Diane does. Or we hire groups like probation and parole that go out there.
In the interest of full disclosure, I'll mention that I have just this month rejoined the BBC board. So I know you've just left it, Greg, your term's over it. And Sharon, you are on the board still.
I'm ad hoc.
You're ad hoc.
You're ad hoc.
Yeah, a member, a voting member of the board. It should be noted that the BBC Board of Directors holds a spot for a Bennington Select Board on their board of directors, as common practice. Michael is going, it's the end of their fiscal year, so Michael has recently been elected. He will be joining the board. I am just leaving the board, and Sharon is a former board member.
I have one last question. Could you talk a little bit about the approximate number of volunteer hours that you see being put in each year, for example? That's an approximate number.
Yeah, it's about 1,400, and that's approximate. That was last year. And that number gets tracked. We're part of the Main Street program, the Vermont Main Street program, which is part of the National Trust for Historic Preservation program. And in that means quarterly we have to track businesses moving in, businesses opening up, businesses closing, businesses moving out, new jobs, lost jobs, investment. And one of the things that we do track is volunteer hours. And it's about 1,400. It went up a little this year with some added activity. The added activity a lot is revolving around colleges now. We now host the Southern Vermont College Dinner downtown, which takes a lot of work. We do the Community Day for Bennington College. We're on the college task force along with Mike Harrington from the town.
Just parenthetically, I had to use my calculator for that, but 1,400 hours is about 27 hours a week, every week of the 52. That's not bad.
Oh, yeah, and that includes the Welcome Center, the docent staff, that event. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of volunteer hours for an event. We had 2 on Main Street this past week, the bike night and the pig roast for the church. Green Mountain Christian Center did it, and we interviewed both of those for Spotlight and Bennington, and when you see that, the pig roast alone, one event, they figured about 60 volunteers, average of about 10 hours each person. So it takes an amazing amount of time just to do the events, but they're an important thing to do.
And do they have any numbers on that? How many people actually?
For the
They
roast?
fed? Yeah.
Yeah, over
I mean, I
400.
know the-
Last year, they did about...
I know the bikers were down there too, so.
It was huge. It was a great night on Main Street. Both organizations did an awesome job. But last year, the church fed about 300 people. This year, they fed over 400 people. But aside from doing a great job, on Main Street last Saturday night, there were groups of people that couldn't get into the restaurants. So we were directing them to restaurants further away. And one of the things I suggested was, there's a great pig roast going on right here on Main Street, and it's free. Plus, it was entertainment. So a lot of people did go in and have dinner with them.
Good.
Just another question, John, it's out of ignorance, I'm sure. If you're a member of, you exist in the tax district.
Yep.
Is that a invitation to become a member, or do you become a member by virtue of that?
If you are a landowner in the district, you are automatically a member and receive all the services that we provide. Some are different for landlords than it is for businesses, such as like a property inventory. If your property is available for rent, we'll list it, we'll help show it, we'll arrange meetings, and we'll help maintain it. We wash windows and keep the door areas cleaned. Business would get different services too, like let's say the events would directly benefit a business. So a landlord is automatically a member, automatically renewed every year. A business then...
You recruit for membership.
We recruit for membership. For the most part, everybody gets represented, membership or not. There's a few benefits, such as placement on our website, free attendance on our roundtables, things such as that paid membership business would get.
Good.
And those businesses outside of the district as well.
Good. I think it's a great organization.
Thanks.
All right, anyone else? Okay, we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you once
John.
again, folks.
John.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for your patience.
Sure.
All right, the next item is borrowing for the water tank. Stuart?
Yes, what you have in your packet and before you now is the application for borrowing the $3 million that the voters have recently approved. This will, once the board approves and signs, would be submitted to the Drinking Water and Groundwater Protection Division. We are at the top of the list. There shouldn't be any issue with approving it. And to give you an idea of the timeline of the project itself, the proposal is to bid the project by August 15th of this year. Generally, it's a 30-day bid period. We're looking for a bid award somewhere around September 23rd. Construction will begin on or about October 15th if everything goes well. There will be a winter shutdown from December 15th through April 15th. The remaining construction will take place, we hope, from April 15th of 2015 to October 15th, with a final completion on January 1, 2016. So that'll include the substantial completion, inspection, punch list items. January 1, 2018, the first payment would be due. So the project is well laid out. We're hoping that we're going to get sufficient bids to make it a very competitive process. Also, we are late in the construction season to be doing that, but our engineers felt it important that we get moving so that we can get much of the work done this fall.
Do you need any action on that, or is that just?
I need a motion to make the application, and I need you folks to sign it.
We have a
I'll
motion.
second.
We have a second from Sharon. Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
And I've got the page marked that we need your signatures on.
Next item is the town manager's evaluation discussion. We have been discussing different ways to create a review for the town manager as our, as it doesn't exist, and as, you know, an employee of the board, to both document past performance, set goals, and create an historic reference to the position. what you have in your packet, you've had additional information earlier, different examples. This is the current personnel evaluation that the town uses for town staff and management positions. It's what Stu uses. So we have two issues, basically how we're going to do, the guts of the review and the policy for when, how often, and to what extent. So I asked everyone to kind of put something together, see if we have any suggestions. So we'll start. Tom, John, do you want to start? Or do you have
Go
anything?
for it.
Excuse me, before you start, is this open for citizens because it's on the agenda?
No.
This is not a citizens comment part, but
It's on the agenda.
Yeah, this right now is board discussion.
Yeah, this is a board discussion
And we'll let
about
you, at the proper time, weigh in, but let us
If you'd
speak.
like-
End of it, I can weigh in.
if you'd like to at the end, yeah, I'd be happy to take comment,
Yeah.
Mike. That'd be fine. Okay.
My feeling is that, one, we have to have a formal policy established by this board so that there is a reference point each and every time we do an evaluation. And I don't see that that has been done yet. We're just throwing out a form, and we're not ready for forms. At this particular point in time, I think it's time for us to come up with a rational policy that benefits the board and our town manager and the future town managers. We don't have that.
Do you have any suggestions to that point at this point?
I've got a proposed policy that I'll be happy to share for an agenda discussion.
Okay.
And then I will pass my remaining time to my colleagues.
Yeah. We talk about goals and objectives for a town manager or any other person. I think we first have to figure out what are the components that we want to look at. Are there strategic leadership, results leadership, people leadership, whatever it is. I'm happy to share with the board members a couple of ideas that I have. And I should have sent these to you by email before this evening. I just did not have the opportunity to do it. I'd be happy to share those with you as the beginning of a discussion of how we begin to evaluate. Creating a form that you use to evaluate somebody is probably the simplest thing, but understanding and determining what you want to evaluate and how often, that's the critical thing.
Yeah, I think we need a policy and procedure before we start making up a form as to how we're going to do it. We need to know, figure out what we're going to do first before we go ahead and do that.
Jim?
I'm all ears. I'm listening.
Justin, you have anything?
I don't have anything at this point.
John?
I think when I first started thinking about this, I did start thinking about it the wrong way. Actually, something Tom said during our budget season kind of came back into my mind, and that's that we don't want to micromanage. And I think that when I first joined this board, one of the things that I tried to do was jump into all groups and tried to help everyone do everything. And really, honestly, Stu, that's why we have a town manager. It's because we're here as a board, and we do have to work with you, and you work with your staff however you see fit. It's not our job to be there for hiring or firing of employees, which is an opinion that I did hold over this past year. It's not our job to tell you how they should do their job, but it is our job to set certain goals for our town moving forward, and it's your job to see that those are reached, however you see fit. The other mistake that I think I made, we're in a 2-month-old discussion at this point about evaluations, if not longer. I know there was snow on the ground. I don't know how long ago that was. It could have been yesterday. But at some point in time, we were talking about this with snow on the ground, and it still hasn't really moved forward. And that's when I came to the next realization, that is that I can set goals for you, for me personally. And this is what I want to see out of my town manager. And it's what's going to give you my vote next year to stay in that position. Everyone else can see or can set their own goals. Hopefully they line up, but they aren't going to. That's why we're a board. We all hold different values and we all see things in a different light. So here's my list, and this is the way that I'm going to judge things moving forward. There's some action items that will be taken away today that will need to be done within the next couple of months. But all in all, this is what I'm looking to see over the next year, and I'll explain why. Some of these are stretch goals, by the way, but we don't have anything to start with at this point, so I just want a starting point. I want to see a 5% reduction in the tax rate. So that means if we're looking at a 3% tax rate across the board, I want to see that come down to a 2.85. Now, that means we either have to increase that grand list or reduce our budget. That's really the two ways to do that. I'm going to give you free rein. In my opinion, a town that's moving forward is one that's spending money the right way, and that means putting money where we don't continue just to increase the tax rate. Across the state, I know that areas in southern Vermont, we have one of the higher tax rates, and that's not fair to our people. I think one of the bigger accomplishments, we don't always talk about accomplishments over the last year, and I know this is going to be a sore one, but we didn't see an increase in the water and sewer rate this last year, or going into this next year. And I think that's a major accomplishment. I said 1% reduction, I just want to see a reduction. Really, it doesn't have to be 1%, but I want to see it continuing to go into the right direction. I know we've had to account for depreciation, and that's been the reason for these spikes in the last few years. But again, I think we try to move in the right direction. We're not always going to get there, but we don't want to see rates go up and up and up. This is in no particular order, by the way. I'd like to see a 5% reduction in the crime rate. I don't know what our crime rate is or how we're calculating it right now. I would like you to do that in the upcoming months, figure out how we can get a third party to determine what the crime rate is. I'm sure working with the police department, they know who they're bringing in, what they're bringing them in for, and we can set some sort of standard. But over this last year and a half, I mean, we've had a rough year. Drug raids, national recognition for negative things. I want to see a 5% reduction in the crime rate. I want that to be set by September. I want to see a decreased use in Section 8 housing, and I do not want to see this taken the wrong way. So what I mean by that is when we introduce these new housing projects, I see them as a reactive solution to not having other things in place. There are people that can't afford housing, so that's why they have to use Section 8. So I want to see a reduction, and the reason I want to see that reduction is because these people no longer have to use Section 8. Again, it's up to you to figure out how to do this. I'm not going to micromanage. The next one that I want to look at is, I've talked about this before, I want us to be connected with our community, and especially the people that employ the most people in our community. So I want to see, throwing numbers out there, a 90% satisfaction rating across our entire town. So hopefully we are connected with the different employers. I know Michael's developed his list of the top 25. Hope we're connected with everybody. And to do this, I would like to see a survey go out to these people. We can start with an annual survey, or if you would like to, go quarterly. I'd like to have this survey developed again before September, if we're looking at things quarterly. And then we'll review that. Or you can, well, no, we need to review that, and then we'll send that out to the connections that have been made, and we'll get their feedback. This is going to help us tremendously, I think, moving forward, and it gives us an idea of who either doesn't want to be here or can't be here anymore. After that, there's no denying the fact that we've lost a number of jobs since, well, not even the last year, in the last 6 months. It's a tough pill to swallow. I wish there was more accountability on our end. I know that in some cases there's not much that can be done, but there's always something that can be done at the right time. So in terms of setting goals, what I want to see is a net 150 jobs, positive net 150 jobs. So I don't want to see 150 jobs come in, but 200 leave. I want to see that improvement made. Again, as far as satisfaction goes, it's not just the employers in town. I want to see a citizen satisfaction rating of 90% or higher. How this is going to be accomplished, it could be a tricky one, but I think we could utilize the fact that we have our town vote in the beginning of the year, and we might be able to use some lines there. The budget's already, or the costs are already covered, and we can add some sort of line in there. Again, this is something we can come up with, but I want it to be developed before September. It can be a simple question of how do you think the town's being run? How do you think it's being managed? What direction are we going? Are you happy with the direction that we're going? Or it can break things down however you see fit. I'm going to leave that up to you to develop and bring to me or the board if they're receptive to it. I'd like to see an increase in the population. Now this is a tough one, but we have continued to see people leaving town. It's one thing that drives property rates down. It's the thing that also decreases our grand list when no one wants to buy and the property values are lower. An increased population is an increase in demand in that regard, so it kind of goes along with some of the other goals that are out there. Just saying an increase could be one extra person that comes to town. It shows us moving in a positive direction where we haven't in the past. This next one was tough, but I'd like to see 4, again, arbitrary numbers at this point because we haven't set any standards yet. But I'm confident that we can be successful with these numbers. 4 projects completed that contribute to our community and a growing community. For example, the Wi-Fi project, that I think is a great one that we've seen in this last year. I know Dan's working on a number of projects as well, the rail trail and all of that. So those type of projects are things that we need to do to make people want to live here. It would help with the increase in the population. I think 4 is a number that we might be able to move. Again, I'm not going to set this until September comes, but that's what I'd like to start with. And then the one thing that I heard my very first day sitting around the round table with all of the town employee, well, your staff, that really bugged me and continues to bother me is that, correct me if these numbers are off, but that we're paving 5 miles of road a year. We have 120 miles of road altogether, and the roads last 10 years. It means that we're short. So I don't know how this is going to be done, but I want to see 2 miles more, an additional 2 miles done this upcoming year compared to this last summer. Now, I know we've been on the right track. We have seen an increase over this last year. I want to see that continue along. We won't be at the point that we want to be at and have to be at to get away from chasing our tails, but that's what I'd like to see. So that's what I have to say.
Cool.
And I'll send this to you just so you have it. And there are a lot of action items that come. Again, September's just the end of the quarter, so that's what I'm looking for. Some responses back, and that's when I'll finalize this. And then come June, that's when I'll be reviewing. And the rest of the board can do as they see fit. I'm on board with seeing a policy go through, but I'm not on board with waiting another month or 2 to see something happen. So this is
Can
what
I get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to thank you, John. You know, we've been talking about this, and I've sent some examples out, and I don't think we're going to get anywhere unless we come to meetings with proposed policies or a list or something like that so that we can take and put together and go forward with. We're not going to craft it at a meeting. I think we're going to have to come with our ideas and then go back, put it together and propose something. So,
Would you send that to me as well, John?
Sure. And just so you know, I value your input as a board and as people that I've worked for, some people for over a year at this point and some for a short period of time. But this is what I'm going to be looking for.
yeah. And what, I mean, in other people's numbers may be different, but I think the topics that you bring forward are what I'm looking for.
Yep.
You know, as we pull that through, what are we looking for in the review of structure and the outline and things like that? Stuart gave me the 2011 goals packet that the select board put, which was part of the initiative of the economic development strategy and stuff. And a lot of that, the road paving philosophy and that stuff, a lot of that's in there. So I'm going through that, and
Tom, was
For
it
the
you that
record?
gave us that
Yes.
outline
No,
or packet?
Due respect, I think John's come up with some interesting numbers there. Many of those action items are going to require tools. The board is going to have to provide the management and the staff with the tools necessary to make these things happen. And also, with all due respect, as the manager, I would be acting on the direction of the board.
Sure.
Not individual board members.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I think.
Understood,
This
but
is
I'm
a
just
good
saying that if
starting
these
point.
are not hit, you know where my vote lies. So you have
That's all
6
right.
other people to convince, and I understand that.
Thank you.
okay. Anybody else?
That's it.
Michael, want to input?
That was a great list, John. I applaud you for it. I think that was probably a list of how many reasons why Stu wants to take an early retirement.
Actually, that's not true, Mike. I plan to be here a good long time.
I hope you watched, Stu.
Thank you.
I saw you trying to, okay. I think what you ought to add to this discussion, though, is, and again, I'm not asking or recommending Stu retire, but at some point, Stu will retire, and this may be the board or partially, the board, you have to address that in the future. I think you ought to have some of that discussion in how you're going to pick your next town manager in this overall look at the town manager's position. I think that would be remiss not to have some kind of discussion as, what do other towns do? What is the right protocol? Are we going to hire from within? Are we going to do a nationwide search? I think that's the bigger picture. I think Stu, all in all, has done a pretty good job over the 20 years. And John's, you can pay me later, Stu. And John's
I
thing
just
is
appreciate
right
it.
on the
Thank
money, but like Stu said, you got to provide the staff with the tools, the money. You can't just snap your fingers and say, okay, Umpteen Road miles are going to be paved, new jobs are going to come in because John or the board said they're going to come in. You have to be realistic. But the bigger issue here is, how are we going to pick the next town manager? And then the other thing what John is right on is, how do we boost the community feeling about themselves? You just had 50, 60 people in front of you. They're ticked off. We've got to do more. Again, I talked to Stu. I don't know why there isn't music downtown now. It's now into the middle of July. I could have brought it to you in June. We sometimes drag our tail to do anything fun for Bennington and make it a big, big deal when it doesn't need to be such a big deal. And you got to start listening to the community. And you all did tonight, so I thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Have a good night. Alrighty, so going forward on that topic, I mean, going to what Mike was saying, part of the inspiration with this motion was to help define the position. So boards going forward understand how this board felt about Stu this year and how the next board felt, and so that there's some kind of an historic documentation of the position itself, which will be helpful in the event that we are in a search for a new manager, or defining someone, or explaining to a candidate how they're going to be judged. You know, I think that's, you know, anybody in your position probably dealt with that at work. You know, you need to know how you're going to be evaluated as you take that position. So, policy, yes, we need.
I'll share what I have, and I thought I already had, but
Okay.
so that we can all bite into that. And just to follow on John's, I think it's great to have the list.
Yeah.
The percentages, I think we're going to have some discussion about. And I think if we stayed with those numbers, Stu would probably be the mayor of New York rather than the town manager of Bennington. But it's time for that.
But yeah, I think the percentages are secondary to the overall conversation, to the content and the structure of the evaluation. Your numbers may be different from somebody else's, you said, but what's all important to the board as a metering device for it.
The other thing that it does, I know I set lofty goals, but let's say the first one was a 5% reduction in our tax rate. That means it's going to be reviewed, and it might come up as a flat.
Right.
No increase, no decrease, but at least now we have to track it.
Right.
And then the decision can be made.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
Is that reasonable for these economy?
Exactly, and then moving forward, like Michael said, and I think like the board's saying, we'll finally have something to bite our teeth into, but we can't have something that is open to so much subjectivity.
Right.
And that's all we've had, intangibles, no accountability.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, as people develop their ideas, I would say send them directly to me. I'll package them and get them out to everybody, so we're not emailing each other en masse.
We need to figure that out, too.
Yeah.
Stuff that you had, that you gave us the last time.
Yeah.
Or not the
I'll try to
last
find
time,
it.
but it was a while ago that you gave us that packet.
Hearing John's metrics, for me, are music to my ears. I like metrics. I like to be able to say, that's there, that was there, now it's here. So that gives us a great start, and I think there are great categories there.
Beautiful. All right. Anything else? Other business? Thomas?
Just license?
Oh, we have liquor licenses, right?
Circulate the liquor license for your signatures.
Oh, and you have the open meeting thing.
Yeah, and there are two sides of the signature, so if you're approving it, sign to the left.
Have the one that says none.
Stu, is that the guy that owns the Ottoman? I think
I'm
it is.
I'm not sure, but it is a transfer from one Patel family to another.
I believe it is the guy that owns the Ottoman. I know it is because he's was a customer.
Are you talking about the Mags Market?
Your former life?
I know he does own at least one motel in addition.
Can I just run into my manager's report quickly,
Yes,
Greg?
please do.
Thank you.
Yes, that's what I was looking for.
The new open meeting law requires that we designate officially 3 public posting locations. I have proposed for you the town offices, the police department lobby, and the kiosk at the Four Corners. All are public, all are controlled by the town, and you will find that should you designate these, that all agendas and notices will be posted on those in the appropriate timeframes for all public bodies in Bennington. So that, I'm asking for a motion to so designate.
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. Sharon, any discussion?
Just maybe it's on point, but there's so many days before the minutes have to be reported out now. It's much
Minutes
shorter
now
than...
are going to be required to be posted within 5 calendar days
Yeah.
of the meetings. It may prove to be difficult for long, lengthy minutes like this, but we'll get them up and on the web and posted as soon as we can.
For approval? They're required to be posted for approval?
There's no board approval opportunity.
Really? So
There
we're
are-
posting minutes before they're approved by the board?
Well, the legislature didn't consider that, and in fact, a lot of small towns are actually taking their websites down because they can't meet that 5-day requirement.
I saw that.
So what we'll be doing is posting the minutes unapproved,
Right.
and subsequent
Can you send them out to us earlier? For
We can send them to
consensus?
you, but you
We
can't.
can't
approve
approve them
them.
outside of meeting. Yeah, we need a quorum to approve them.
So in order to meet the requirements of the law, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of towns are pointing out to the legislators, that they didn't give due consideration to approval processes that the boards undergo. So that'll be something that I hope will be tweaked in the next
Is
legislative
it
session.
indicated in the posting that they are not yet approved by the board?
We can do that.
Yeah, I think that would be wise, because to post them would indicate that they've been reviewed and approved. And that
Good
could be
idea.
a whole nother issue,
Yes.
you know?
Who knows what could get written?
I know,
We'll cut a page.
yeah. When Joe Carroll's at another meeting.
Right.
So we'll indicate that these are not yet approved on our
Okay.
postings.
Appreciate it. All righty, then other business.
No, I think we have to vote on it, right? Did we vote?
Do you need a motion on that?
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do need
That's
a
what we
motion.
got.
Sorry, do I have a motion?
All moved.
He has a motion.
Yeah, we just haven't voted on it.
Seconded.
We just-
Oh, okay. Oh, that was the other
we voted
discussion.
on it.
All right, we need the vote. Nice.
It's getting there.
That is why you get a vacation.
Good, I won't be here for the next meeting.
Gonna vote on this?
Yeah. If, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
And that is unanimous. Okay. Now, other business. How about now, Tom?
No, I move we adjourned.
You can't do that yet.
Can't do that.
No. I'd
Michael?
like to.
I'm so pleased that this was such a good evening. It was civil, and it was a good lesson in civics. As several people pointed out, there are a lot of decisions still to be made. I think one unspoken piece was that there were what I would call some serious comments made about presentation and documents that Mr. Broderick and Shire's Housing put together. Somewhere there needs to be a response. We have heard one side and a very articulate side. I think we need to hear the other side as well.
Sharon?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Stu, I know we had, while I was away, there were a couple of really bad storms. With the flooding there on South Street, Lake South Street, as it's been called infamously.
Didn't really.
In front of the town office, have there been any, were there flooding at
Minor.
It was not as serious as it has been in the past. I mean, heavy rainfall, we do have some problems, but this year we have contracted with a company to clean all of the storm drains, and this will be an annual basis. We were trying to do in-house, but we simply weren't able to accomplish it. So we've got Hardigan Company in town on an annual basis now.
So the BBC didn't get any water damage or any flooding in their office, and you didn't?
Not that I know of.
In your
No, it
office,
was-
Tom?
Oh, no, just the catamounts have left, so there's no way to measure the height.
Okay, no, I was just wondering about that, because I knew we had a couple of really bad storms, so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
James?
I just want to say how great the first bike night was. It was
Yeah.
really quite a surprise. I've been through many first events, and and this was just blew it right out of the water.
Yeah.
It was great.
It was huge.
Yeah.
It was great. Justin? Nothing? John?
Just a question on, is there anything that we can do to legally have a conversation outside of our meetings that happen twice a month?
You can, if you have a quorum and you're talking about town business, it is a meeting.
Okay,
That's the way it's stated.
And
So-
that can be via email as well.
Well, that's it, so it
less.
needs to
Three
be
board members or
warned,
less.
yeah, email or anything. So if you're having a conversation about town business with 3 other select board members, something should go off in your head that you're having a meeting.
Right.
And that, this is something that should be open to the public.
So
for
here's my
discussion.
question, with these minutes,
Yeah.
if we sent out something that said, we approve these minutes ahead of time, and all 7 of us are copied on that, and we all approve, and then produce the record that we are all in this email trail to approve those minutes, we can then release approved minutes.
Actually, the problem is that the law requires that a meeting notice and an agenda be posted prior to the meeting taking place. So, John, you can't.
Yeah, there's no
You can't-
distinction
Do people
between.
have to be present, be
You
allowed to be
can't
present?
You can't do business that
It has to be
way.
open,
Yeah.
it can't be behind closed doors.
Yeah,
You
so
have
that's
to-
that's the idea, is that they don't want, they want to prevent us from developing ideas, from discussing town business without the public having an opportunity to comment and review the process.
Can't do a vote by email.
Right.
You cannot convince or garnish a vote by email.
Thanks, Mike.
If you have a corporation, you
We know
could.
that.
Actually, the new law, Mike, does allow participation by phone and
Yeah.
by email at meetings, but it has to be at a publicly
But it would
warned.
have to-
Right, but I
Right,
can't do
yeah.
it by emails all 7 of them.
Right, correct. So,
So we could call in?
Yes.
if we,
Under
yeah,
the
if
new
we,
law, that is now allowed.
yeah, I mean, you could do it,
We don't have, we're not going to bring a phone.
iPad.
You're going to have to
Yeah.
come to these meetings whether you want to.
I thought they post something, a little picture.
There's a laundry list of ways to do
Yeah,
it and stuff,
yeah.
but they do allow it with teleconferencing and things like that.
Yeah, but that's another
I
system.
had one more question. With the 600 signatures, what does that mean moving forward?
That's, well, that's a good question. I was going to present that to you. I'm glad you reminded me because I'm running out of steam. I will, what I can do is
It's an
give a copy
expression,
of the text of it.
it's an expression of opinion
It's an
of
expression of
600 people.
Yeah,
It really has no legal standing. It is not a petition for a vote. It's not,
it's a statement.
it's a statement
And
that
what
they would like to be made part of the record.
What I would,
That's really what it is.
right, what I can do is I can get everybody a copy of the statement, so you know what the statement was. I mean, you don't need all the names and everything unless they'll be on review. And I was going to also present that to Shires Housing as the developer, so that they knew what the statement was and had,
I think
You
we
know.
should give it to the board secretary and let her make it part of the minutes.
I would move that.
And then it's public information for
That's
anybody
on
who
it.
wants it.
Absolutely.
okay, so we'll hand this over, and if we can get a copy of that statement to the members of the board and make that public, and if you would copy John Broderick as well with the text of that. Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, John. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.